Chapter 1455. The Dharma Supreme's eyes were a little solemn. The final attack of the two shadows actually didn't manage to kill Wu Jueqing, who was severely injured and had lost his essence. He had thought that the heavenly demonic energy could directly destroy Wu Jueqing, but he didn't expect Wu Jueqing to be so strong. Not only did he not die on the spot, he even managed to injure him severely. If Wu Jueqing had died, it wouldn't matter even if he participated in the operation with this body. But now Wu Jueqing wasn't dead. Yes. Both of them bowed and answered. This is my identity token. Seeing it is the same as seeing me. Mobilize the law enforcement officers and cooperate with Diwu Qingru. The Dharma Supreme said sinisterly, Understood? Understood. Cooperating with Diwu Qingru was not cooperating with the 8 super clans. Of course both of them weren't fools. The Dharma Supreme snorted, some resentment in his eyes. He really didn't expect Wu Jueqing to have the 7 poisons that could temporarily suppress the heavenly demonic energy. Otherwise, Wu Jueqing would have died today and he wouldn't have suffered such serious injuries. But now it was too late to say anything. The Dharma Supreme was also a tragic coincidence. In order to treat Chu Luer's injuries, Chu Yang had prepared the 7 poisons. Wu Jueqing naturally knew how to treat Chu Luer's injuries and asked Chu Yang if there were any left. And these 7 poisons were not present when Wu Jueqing was with the Dharma Supreme. But in this 1 year, Chu Yang had given them to Wu Jueqing. It was also because of this that Wu Jueqing's life was saved today. And the reason why Chu Yang gave them to Wu Jueqing was because Wu Jueqing had taken Chu Luer as his disciple. And part of the reason why Chu Yang was able to gather these medicines was because of the medicine banquet, and the medicine banquet. It was arranged by the Dharma Supreme and the Medicine Valley. In that case, the Dharma Supreme's flawless plan was destined to leave behind an opponent here from that moment onwards. If anyone were to ponder over this matter, they would be flabbergasted. There was actually such a thing in this world. The Dharma Supreme's body flashed and disappeared without a trace. He didn't trust anyone, even if they were his personal bodyguards. Therefore, for his recovery he had to find a place secretly. Using a secret technique. He wouldn't let anyone know of his whereabouts. Although the Diwu clan's great cause might be a little affected because of his injuries this time, the Dharma Supreme believed in Diwu Qingru. It wasn't a big problem. Moreover, his injuries were the most important thing now. Even if the Diwu clan was wiped out because of this, the Dharma Supreme would have to recuperate first. Rise because of me, fall because of me, it's nothing much. That was what the Dharma Supreme thought. Wu Jueqing, who had retreated, was also rejoicing. Who would have thought that Diwu Chouchang would be so terrifying now? His advancement was truly inconceivable. He had indeed been too careless this time. However, because of this, the Dharma Supreme won't be able to recover for at least 4 to 5 months after this battle. This should be very beneficial to those little fellows, Wu Jueqing thought. It's just a pity for this old man's old bones. Looks like I have no choice but to open my mouth and ask for heavy pills. Wu Jueqing laughed bitterly in his heart. Suddenly he felt a surge of emotions. This heavy pill. I ate it back then. When he thought of this, Wu Jueqing actually couldn't help but feel a lump in his throat. He heaved a long sigh and turned around to leave. He did not return to Chu Luer's place. He was also worried that if the Dharma Supreme really sent people to chase after him, at that time if his heavenly demonic energy flared up, he really would not be able to protect his disciple. Besides, he didn't want Chu Luer to see him injured. That little girl would definitely cry, Wu Jueqing thought. He headed towards the northwest. In these few days, Diwu Qingru launched attacks continuously. Every time he was very cautious. Emo Qinji stayed at the Li clan and dealt with every move as they came. He dealt with them one by one. Diwu Qingru's attacks were very measured and Emo Qinji dealt with them with ease. No one gained the upper hand and no one was able to gain any advantage. The two sides were in a stalemate. Both sides came and went like the wind, their footsteps hurried. They went back and forth, creating a tense atmosphere that almost crushed the blue sky for no reason. However, only a few dozen people died on each side. The Li clan was jittery and paranoid. A storm was coming from the allied forces. Dark clouds were pressing down on the city, threatening to destroy it. The few times they came into contact with the tail of the troops, it was so thrilling that even a low-grade supreme martial artist would break out in cold sweat. Diwu Qingru set up an ambush and Emo Qinji led the troops to break it. Diwu Qingru's thunderous ambush only affected a small team of the Li clan and was cleanly destroyed. However, the main force retreated safely. Those who retreated all felt as though they had escaped with their lives. The opponent's powerful strength and mighty ambush made everyone feel as though they were circling the gates of hell. This was a feeling that no one dared to recall for the rest of their lives. If not for advisor Mo Tianji's foresight, they might have. When they thought of this, they were even more impressed with Mo Tianji. The same went for Li Wubua. They no longer had any doubts about Mo Tianji's capabilities. Moreover, the Li clan was in a precarious situation now. No one in the Li clan had the ability to turn the situation around. Therefore, they could only give Mo Tianji full authority and trust him unconditionally. Of course, in these few operations, the Li clan naturally sent Li Xiongtu to the battlefield for a very legitimate reason. Li Ju stayed behind to guard the rear and accompany Mo Tianji. Mo Tianji did not have any objections to this. In fact, he approved of it very much. Moreover, his relationship with Li Ju seemed to be getting closer and closer. Occasionally they could even joke around with each other. To the Li clan, this was no different from a sudden flash of light and dawn. As they made use of Li Xiongtu, the chances of him being sent out to deal with dangerous people became higher and higher. In the end, he did not even have time to come back. Li Xiongtu's bravery was also fully displayed in this battle. As the number of battles increased, Li Xiongtu's natural ferocity allowed him to not lose his life in dangerous situations. On the contrary, he achieved many meritorious deeds. In a short period of time he became even more famous. On the other side, Mo Tianji had set up 2 traps in a row. Every time, the Li clan's experts were sent out in full force to deal with 1 or 2 of the 8 super clans' allied forces. One must know that the strength of the allied forces was at most 1/5 of the total strength of the respective clans. Even if the Li clan sent out all their forces, they could still win in a head-on battle against the allied forces of 2 super clans. What more, a sneak attack. Every time, it was Diwu Qingru who realized that something was wrong and quickly sent out reinforcements. Only then would these people be saved. It could be said that if it wasn't for Diwu Qingru's command here, there was really a possibility that this terrifying opponent could turn the tables and defeat these elites of the 8 super clans with his insignificant strength. The terrifying level of the opponent shocked these 8 super clans and law enforcement experts who had dominated the heavenly layer for 10,000 years. In fact, they even felt a chill down their spines. After 4 or 5 encounters, many of them even had this thought: if Diwu Qingru wasn't here to command calmly, they would have gone back immediately and not participated in this battle. Damn it, the thousands of years of danger in the martial world couldn't compare to being closer to death here. Diwu Qingru's divine foresight allowed him to turn the tables time and time again. These experts of the 8 super clans couldn't help but compare him with the wise men of their own clans. But they all came to the same conclusion: compared to Diwu Qingru, those in our clans were trash. They were just mediocre. During this period of time, although Diwu Qingru and Mo Tianji didn't have any glorious battle achievements, they each established an unshakable authority. Mo Tianji had absolute power, but Diwu Qingru had also achieved complete control. All of this happened in just a short month. No one knew that the reason why their prestige had soared this time was because the 2 supreme commanders had reached a tacit understanding with each other. They had helped each other, each took what they needed. And the ones who needed to be sacrificed were a group of experts from the big clans who were already convinced and couldn't wait to prostrate themselves in front of them. Just as Diwu Qingru's reputation gradually shone like the sun, suddenly, a rumor silently spread among the allied forces. Commander Diwu is now just a subordinate of the Zhuge clan. It can be said that he has no strength, no status, no qualifications and no background. But he reached such heights with his bare hands and his own strength. And Commander Diwu is just helping. If one day Commander Diwu establishes his own clan and has a certain level of strength, what will happen? This rumor was like a silent spring rain that moistened things and quietly spread among the allied forces. When everyone heard this rumor, they naturally came up with the same answer. If that's the case, Commander Diwu will be invincible in the world. No strength, no status, no background, no qualifications, but Diwu Qingru can still make the heroes of the world bow their heads and obey him wholeheartedly. What if he has strength, status and background? Is there a need to think about it? Diwu Qingru is absolutely invincible in the world. But this invincibility, what does it mean? Means Diwu Qingru's clan will become the #1 clan in the heavenly layer. Moreover, he has more than 100% chance of unifying the heavenly layer. It will be the first time in 10,000 years that a single person has established a super hegemony. He had done something that countless heroes couldn't do. Surpass the past. Then another rumor spread: if Commander Diwu establishes his clan and we join, and become founding members, then what will happen? This question was even simpler. There was no need to think about it. Everyone had the same answer in their hearts. Then we will leave our names in the annals of history for tens of thousands of years. We will be the founding heroes of the nation. Moreover, under such people, the danger of their lives will be less than in other clans. Or even more. Everyone's heart suddenly burned with passion. Chapter 1456. These two rumors shook the hearts of the experts of the big clans. Of course, the experts of the world were roped in by the big clans. But in the big clans, the real experts of their own clans accounted for at most less than half. And this was already an extremely terrifying ratio. And the backbone of the clan, most of them were not of the same surname or were the geniuses of the subsidiary clans. There were also some people who were valued for their talent and given the surname of the clan. But these people, although their status in their respective clans was not low, in fact, everyone understood. No matter how awesome I am only a high-level fighter. If my grandson fails to live up to expectations in the future, he will still be a slave. He will never be a master. But this rumor raised a possibility. If Diwu Qingru could really achieve eternal hegemony, he would be able to oversee a region under his command, right? At that time he would be a feudal lord, able to call the wind and summon the rain. He would be like the big clans now, able to multiply and strengthen his grandchildren. At this time a sentence came out of nowhere. Men who is willing to work for others for the rest of their lives. Who is willing to let their grandchildren be slaves. Nobles, generals and ministers would rather have the guts? Do we not dare to take the risk? When this sentence came out, everyone's heart seemed to explode fiercely. The rumor had just started and Diwu Qingru seemed to have immediately discovered it. Then Diwu Qingru specially gathered everyone for this matter and righteously clarified it. And absolutely denied it. This is the enemy's trick. This is the only way that the enemy's commander can divide us. How could I, Diwu Qingru, do such a thing? I hope that everyone will not believe in the rumors. Diwu Qingru said, the innocent will know the truth. Everyone listened and had some more admiration for Diwu Qingru's character. And they were even more convinced of the origin of the rumor. Just as Diwu Qingru said, in the world except for the enemy's commander, no one can hit our biggest weakness. So, this is a vicious move. Just by using the most common rumor, it's enough to cause panic in our hearts. Yes, it was indeed panic. After Diwu Qingru clarified, people's hearts were even more shaken. It was a kind of hope that this rumor would come true. And it was a kind of certainty. Because this was what the enemy's commander had said. During this period of battle, everyone knew how powerful the enemy's commander was. Indeed, he appeared and disappeared unpredictably. Everyone wanted to tear that person into pieces, but they couldn't help but admire him. It was hard to imagine that a person's brain could be so meticulous. But now, was the rumor that he brought up really just a rumor? How could he not see Diwu Qingru's ability? Diwu Qingru was not this terrifying. So, even if he came up with this rumor, what was the use? So, even that mysterious military advisor of the other side has affirmed Diwu Qingru's ability. What else do we have to doubt? Therefore, everyone was even more tempted. But, on the surface, of course, no one would reveal it. If the world is a chessboard, I want to be the one playing the game. Inside the tent, Diwu Qingru said to the two shadow guards of the Dharma Supreme without hesitation, using the common people as chess pieces, one win and one lose. Now my opponent has appeared. He is the strongest opponent I've ever faced in my life. Such an opponent. Facing off against me like this is one of the greatest joys in life. Meeting one's match, meeting one's talent. Every invincible general may be able to fight his enemy to a draw on the battlefield. And this kind of thing has happened in all the dynasties, so it's not surprising. However, the two top military strategists are fighting head-on. Both of them are unprecedented geniuses. The appearance of these two people at the same time is something that has never happened in the history of the heavenly layer. This is a grand occasion for mankind. Even if the whole world is annihilated in this battle, it's worth it. This is a battle of the top. Both sides have top martial strength and top intellect. This battle will definitely shake the heavens. I can't retreat. I can't hide. I have to win. Diwu Qingru said lightly, I want to let the world know that tribulation is not invincible. I Diwu Qingru am the god of war. So, I want to be the first military advisor in the heavens to defeat tribulation. As long as they are evenly matched after this battle, once the banner of the Diwu clan is raised, a storm will surge. And this is only the result of a draw. If I win, then I'll immediately become the #1 clan in the heavens, the number one force. The next step is to truly conquer the heavens. I'm looking forward to it. When the entire heavens is under my feet. That's my real peak. My lifelong pursuit. Diwu Qingru looked at the white snow outside and said quietly. Even the two second-grade supreme martial artists were shocked by Diwu Qingru's ambition and grand blueprint. On the other side, Mo Tianji stood in Li Xiongtu's small courtyard with his hands behind his back, looking at the ice on the wall, lost in thought. Li Ju was sent out by him, and everyone knew that Mo Tianji had been racking his brains during this period. He was indeed tired and needed a good rest. So, when there was no battle, the Li clan tried not to disturb him and let their only hope have a good rest. But Ao Shiyun and Rui Budong could tell. Mo Tianji was not tired at all. Not only was he not tired, but he was also unprecedentedly excited. Diwu Qingru's huge pressure was on Mo Tianji alone. Under such huge pressure, Mo Tianji's master of calculation and manipulation was further awakened. The power to control the world was truly activated. Mo Tianji's wisdom seemed to be increasing every day. He was being pressured by Diwu Qingru to advance and climb higher. And this climb seemed to have no end. Mo Tianji's unparalleled military talent was truly revealed from this battle. Mature. He stood with his hands behind his back. His expression was calm. Ao Shiyun and Rui Budong stood quietly behind him, standing lazily. If this heavens is a chessboard, then I'm willing to be the player. With the stars as the chess pieces, with prosperity as the wager, with all living beings as the backing, with brothers as the support. Make my brother Tribulation proud of the heavenly layer. Mo Tianji murmured softly. What really made people feel chills down their spines was that when Mo Tianji said this sentence, he was almost at the same time as Diwu Qingru. Moreover, at the same time, two people from two different regions said almost the same sentence. Of course, it was only almost the same. After all, they were still different. But this was enough to make people who knew the truth so shocked that their minds went blank. Ao Shiyun said, if this heavens is a chessboard and the stars are the chess pieces, then who are you? Mo Tianji, you are the player. Where are my and Butong's positions? Behind me. Mo Tianji calmly said, I have all of you behind me. You are my shield. And only you guys can give me endless confidence. If there were no you guys in this world, even if I dominated the heavens, I would still be the ruler. What's the point of dominating the stars? I need you guys to share my glory. When Mo Tianji said this, Chu Yang's figure seemed to appear in front of him. He seemed to see Chu Yang smiling and saying, no. It's us. Mo Tianji's lips curled into a sincere smile. He said quietly, yes. It's us. Every one of us has the same glory. I don't want to be alone. I want to be at the top together. An indescribable warmth rose in Ao Shiyun and Rui Budong's hearts. It wasn't surprising that Chu Yang would say something like this. Because Chu Yang had always valued relationships. He saw every one of his brothers as his flesh and blood. However, Mo Tianji was known for his deep scheming and ruthlessness. His face was cold and his heart was cold. Now, these words coming from Mo Tianji's mouth were even more touching. The two of them looked at each other and realized that the other's face was red with excitement. There had never been a moment where they felt so close to each other. We are one. Chu Yang, Gu Duxing, Dong Wushang, GMO, Luo Kadi, Ao Shiyun, Mo Tianji, Rui Budong, Xia Danxiong. Do you guys remember? Boss once said. Mo Tianji said with a smile, when we are at the top of the heavens, everyone has to be there. Only then will it be meaningful. Yes, we remember. Ao Shiyun and Rui Budong replied at the same time. I finally understand how Boss felt at that time. Mo Tianji said very respectfully, Boss only used his loyalty to pave a path to the top for these brothers. Ao Shiyun and Rui Budong looked at him with some confusion. Mo Tianji smiled and said, there will come a day when you will understand. This kind of thing needs to be experienced by yourselves. Ao Shiyun frowned and fell into deep thought. Mo Tianji faintly smiled, I used to be very lazy. Even though I was used to scheming and preparing for a rainy day, I had never truly gone all out to do something. I had never racked my brains to defeat someone. Because in this world, I have never met someone who is worthy of me doing so. In the long run, my intelligence will never reach the peak. Why did the one who controlled the world die so early? Because he was too smart and had no opponents. Without opponents, there would be no pressure. Without pressure, there would be no motivation. So he died. And so did I. Until today. If Diwu Qingru didn't appear, I would only have Chu Yang as my opponent in this life. But Chu Yang and I will never truly fight to the death. so we are still one step away. But Diwu Qingruo's appearance is the first great joy in my life. To me I am a sharp knife, and Diwu Qingru is an excellent whetstone. Mo Qingji said faintly, to Diwu Qingru, he is the knife and I am the whetstone. This is my chance and it is also his chance. Let's see who will transform into a divine weapon, and who will degenerate into scrap metal. Mo Qingji said calmly. His gaze passed through the white snow and looked towards the south. It was as if he felt that in that position, in a distant place, there were two equally wise and calm gazes piercing through the air. Chapter 1457. Mo Qingji was in full swing while Diwu Qingru was actively making preparations. The two great wise men in the world had already started their battle. And the other king of Hell Chu, whom everyone guessed to be qualified enough to go against Diwu Qingru, had been living leisurely these few days. He had nothing to do and was very comfortable. Everyone thought that Chu Yang would definitely participate in the battle. Diwu Qingru was even prepared to fight 1 against 2. But in reality Chu Yang was not participating in the battle now. Instead he was leisurely with Mo Qinggu, Dong Wuxiang and the rest. Other than practicing he was just watching coldly from the sidelines. Chu Yang, my second brother, is fighting a battle of wits and courage with Diwu Qingru. But now it looks like you've already withdrawn from this battle? Just in the form of a bystander or a surprise attack. In a huge cave. Mo Qinggu raised her head slightly and looked at Chu Yang. She asked, why is that? If your intelligence is combined with my second brother's intelligence, won't you guys be sure to win against Diwu Qingru? Chu Yang looked at Mo Qinggu with some surprise. He could feel that Mo Qinggu's intelligence was also growing rapidly. Now she also had her own judgment of the situation. If it was the Mo Qinggu of the past, she wouldn't have said this at all. Yes, this is a tacit understanding between me and Qingji. I can only attack at the right time, but I won't affect or command. All the decisions this time belong to Qingji. This is a battle between him and Diwu Qingru. It is also something that Qingji has been longing for a long time. And for Qingji, this kind of battle may only happen once in his life. So he won't allow me to interfere. Chu Yang said slowly and thoughtfully. Mo Qinggu nodded. I see. Yes, actually, there are still some things that you don't understand. This battle was requested by Qingji himself. It is also what I want to see. Chu Yang smiled and said, after this battle if Qingji can win. Then, from then on, no one in the world will be a match for Mo Qingji in terms of intelligence. Mo Qinggu's eyes widened in shock. You're training for my brother in this battle? Training? Chu Yang couldn't help but laugh. If that's the case it is indeed very appropriate. Mo Qinggu grunted in agreement. After the 4 of them left that place they directly came here. This place was very close to the Li clan. This mountain was tall enough. Most importantly, this mountain was unshakable. With the sharpness of Calamity Sword, it took Chu Yang quite a bit of effort to dig out such a large hole for the 4 of them to hide in. There was a suite inside the big hole. The intersecting passageway was something that Mo had forced Dong Wuxiang to carve out with his saber. It looked to be filled with Dong Wuxiang's boorish style. After 2 turns inside there was another large space. It was a bedroom. Dong Wuxiang and Mo lived here. In the opposite direction there was also a passageway which was where Chu Yang and Mo Qinggu lived. Right now Dong Wuxiang and Mo had already gone to rest. Only Chu Yang and Mo Qinggu were here. 2 luminous pearls were embedded in the rocks above his head, filling the stone room with a hazy milky white light. Mo Qinggu lay quietly in Chu Yang's arms. After a long while, she suddenly asked, Chu Yang, you said that you have something to tell me. May I know what it is? Chu Yang took a deep breath and said, yes, there is indeed something. But he thought for a while and finally decided to make use of the time he had now to make things clear to Mo Qinggu in advance. If Mo Qinggu suddenly no longer had any doubts about that dream and confirmed something, Chu Yang was worried that he would lose her again. Besides, ever since Tai Butian's matter was confirmed, he had never thought of hiding it from Mo Qinggu. It's like this about my relationship problems. Chu Yang opened his mouth with great difficulty. There is another woman who likes me very much and, Chu Yang made up his mind and told him the whole story. Mo Qinggu blinked her big eyes and looked at Chu Yang's face. Besides some jealousy on her little face, there was actually more curiosity about gossip. This made Chu Yang not know whether to laugh or cry. After all, she was still young. I knew it. Big brother Chu Yang, with your good qualities, how can there not be any girls who are attracted to you? Mo Qinggu finally finished listening. She heaved a long sigh of relief and said with some bitterness in her tone, "Now there are two." Chu Yang coughed dryly, feeling a little nervous for some reason. "What about me?" Mo Qingwu looked up and said with some nervousness, some fear and some uneasiness, "Big brother Chu Yang, are you making a choice? Then will you choose them and not me?" Chu Yang was stunned. He had told her the whole truth with the intention of being honest and fighting for leniency. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that Mo Qingwu would actually feel a sense of crisis before he was even feeling uneasy. And it came from this side. Chu Yang felt a little dizzy. "Qingwu, that." Chu Yang was a little confused and asked, "Little Wu, what do you think?" "I don't care." The little girl shook her head domineeringly and declared, "No matter what, you can't abandon me." Chu Yang was stunned again. "Even if you have them, you can't abandon me," the little girl said fiercely, but her tone was getting weaker and weaker. Her eyes were getting redder and redder. She started to sob. Although they were earlier than me, Chu Yang completely understood. He suddenly wanted to scold himself for being a pighead. Yes, in his previous life, Mo Qingwu was his one and only. She was the first and also the last. But in this life, Mo Qingwu was the latecomer. At least, whether it was Tai Butian or Wu Qianqian, they were earlier than Mo Qingwu. So Mo Qingwu was a little uneasy. "How could I not want you?" Chu Yang felt that his mouth had become clumsy. He said, "Even if I don't want anyone else, I will still want Xiao Wu. I'm just worried that you will reject this matter and refuse to accept them." Yes, after all, Butian already has my child. Why won't I accept them?" Mo Qingwu pouted and jealousy overflowed. "They were earlier than me after all. I'm just worried that they will bully me." Chu Yang hugged her in his arms and sighed. He said, "Little Wu, I don't know how to say it, but in my heart you are the first." "Really?" Mo Qingwu looked at him with her big eyes full of brilliance. "Really?" Chu Yang nodded vigorously to confirm. "Then I'm not worried anymore." Mo Qingwu hugged Chu Yang's neck and suddenly kissed him on the cheek. She rested her head on his shoulder and said shyly, "Brother Chu Yang? Actually, I can also give birth to children." Chu Yang shuddered. Suddenly the beast's blood boiled. He suppressed the thoughts in his heart. He took 2 deep breaths. He said, "Qingwu, actually you don't know." Mo Qingwu gently covered his mouth with her small hand and said in a low voice, "You don't have to say anything. I'm so satisfied to be by your side." She smiled a little sadly and said, "It's better than in the dream, right? In the dream I was so desperate to keep you and beg you. I had no self-respect and no sense of self, but I was abandoned by you like a pair of worn-out shoes. Now I can freely stay by your side and you treat me like a pearl." "I'm very satisfied," she said quietly. "I'm very satisfied, Chu Yang." Chu Yang couldn't help but be in a daze again. The one who spoke earlier was undoubtedly the little girl Mo Qingwu. But why did the one who spoke now give him the feeling of Mo Qingwu in his previous life? "Little Wu, what if that dream is real?" Chu Yang asked tentatively. Mo Qingwu's delicate body visibly shrank. Suddenly, she hugged Chu Yang with all her might. "No, I don't want that dream to be real. If that's the case, I'll die. I'll really die of sadness." Chu Yang hugged Mo Qingwu and looked up with his eyes wide open. Smelling the delicate fragrance on Mo Qingwu's body, his gaze was a little unfocused. Mo Qingji finally launched a counterattack. The experts of the Li clan were divided into 10 teams by him. Like 10 sharp arrows, they shot out fiercely. Instead of sitting and waiting for death, it's better to take the initiative to attack. Mo Qingji said, "So, even though we're relatively weak, we must take the initiative. If we even lose the initiative, then we'll be completely defeated. Battles have always been fought outside. No one is willing to fight in their own home. This time they fought into the territory of the Li clan. The territory is too big and the opponent's strength is too strong. That's understandable. However, the Li clan's courtyard, this last fortress, must not become the battlefield. So we must attack immediately. Go to their place." Mo Qingji said indifferently, "No one would expect us to take the initiative to attack against the combined forces of the 8 superclans with our weak strength. However, this misconception is our chance. This time I'll follow the army and command on the spot. My only request to all of you is that you must obey all orders. Every order must not be hesitant. Otherwise it'll be a matter of the survival of the clan. I hope all of you will remember this. Let's go." Other than the elder master who didn't participate in the clan's operation and Mo Qingji left behind a dozen people to watch over the clan, the rest of the experts of the Li clan all set off. This was an extremely bold risk. The currently clan was equivalent to an empty city. If they were attacked from the back, they wouldn't even be able to retreat. No one expected that after Mo Tianji commanded the Li clan army to passively deal with Diwu Qingrou's dozens of attacks, he would immediately choose to take the initiative to attack. Li Xiong too was arranged to be in the first wave together with Li Ju and Li Ba Tian. Ao Shiyun and Rui Butong also set off with the army this time. They asked Mo Tianji why he made such a decision. Gambling. Actually, life is a gamble. When the time is right, you'll bet everything you have. If you win, you'll win. If you lose, you'll lose. Mo Tianji said, but during this period of time, our stance has been to defend. We've never moved out on a large scale. Going out in full force without leaving a way out is a taboo for military strategists. As the military advisor, I'm going to commit a taboo this time. Chapter 1458. Ao Shiyun scratched his head. It's too risky. Diwu Qingrou is cautious by nature. He won't make such a mistake. Mo Tianji's eyes lit up. So he won't believe that I'll make such a huge mistake. If Diwu Qingrou can predict it in advance, then we've already lost this battle. But I'm confident that Diwu Qingrou won't predict it. Mo Tianji was moving forward at a very fast speed. He insipidly said, that's because I didn't think about it before this. I made this decision after a flash of inspiration. It hasn't been more than half an hour since I set off from here and arrived at this place. Ao Shiyun was shocked. You mobilized the entire army on a whim? Even I was surprised. So Diwu Qingrou won't predict it in advance. Mo Tianji looked at the Li clan troops in snow-white clothes that almost blended into the white snow. He smiled a little proudly. And then? Ao Shiyun asked. Mo Tianji frowned and said, and then there's no plan now. Diwu Qingrou's strategy has already reached a stage where there's no trace to be found. So, I can only deal with it as it comes, and then decide on the next step. Ao Shiyun was surprised and didn't say anything. Mo Tianji smiled and patted Ao Shiyun's shoulder. What kind of enemy needs to be dealt with a certain kind of strategy? Yes, that's it. As he said that, Mo Tianji sped forward, leaving Ao Shiyun behind. Obviously, he didn't want to talk about this topic. Ao Shiyun scratched his head and asked Rui Badong, what do you think? Rui Badong rolled his eyes. What do I think when Mo Tianji is by my side? I've never used my brain. Ao Shiyun was furious. He scolded, fuck? When Mo Tianji isn't by your side, you've never used your brain either. You're brainless. Rui Badong was almost stunned. He said in confusion, what does this have to do with me? Fuck, why are you targeting me for no reason? Ao Shiyun had already flown several hundred feet away. Diwu Qingrou had come into contact with Mo Tianji several times. So, he had come to realize how powerful Mo Tianji was. He had never met such a strong opponent. For a moment, his fighting spirit was also burning. It had always been Diwu Qingrou who led others by the nose. But now, he had a feeling that things were out of his control. Every time they touched. Whatever he wanted to achieve, the person opposite him seemed to know everything. And when he wants to cooperate with me, it's usually when he wants to get some benefits from me. He could cooperate and even make concessions according to his own deployment to achieve the goal he wanted to achieve. For example, raising morale. For example, increasing the speed of the formation of the Diwu family and so on. But when he didn't want to let him get these things, which meant that when he wanted to gain more benefits from his deployment, that side would often give him a head-on blow, or completely destroy everything or even cut him in half. And these were also done under extremely limited circumstances. Of course, when he wanted something. In that case, he had to give the other party some leeway so that the other party could also reap the same benefits, just a little smaller. For this, he had to send out a signal in advance for the other party to cooperate. In other words, if he didn't let the other party see the benefits, then the other party definitely wouldn't cooperate. And when there was some action on the other side and that person wanted to get some benefits or authority, the other side's action would also give him a clear hint. At that time, he would also see the corresponding benefits. Although it was a little aggrieved, it was for what he could get. He also had to cooperate. But the current situation was one point. Diwu Qingrou knew that he had the upper hand in terms of strength, but in terms of real planning he was slightly inferior to the other party. That was, he had once made an action that he wanted to gain a lot of benefits, and it was beyond the other party's tolerance range. At that time the other party didn't cooperate at all and gave him a head-on blow. Although he didn't suffer a big loss, Diwu Qingrou could see from the other party's deployment that the other party was a little angry. On the other hand, the other party didn't do such a thing that was beyond his tolerance at all. Everything was carried out within the range of propriety, measurement, control, and grasp. This showed that the other party's sense of propriety was perfect, and he wasn't greedy at all. He also had a good grasp of the overall situation and other aspects. Sun Sun was elegant, smiling at the wind and the clouds. Diwu Qingro praised, "You are indeed worthy of being called tribulation strategist. You are worthy of your reputation, and you have the demeanor of a great general. But, the reason why I took the risk that day was to test you. Secondly, the wish of the ancestors of the Diwu clan put a lot of pressure on me. However, you didn't have such pressure at all. That's why I lost. But I can't make the same mistake again. So, it's still unknown who will win in the future. Now I have realized my mistake and the strength of my side is several times that of yours, so, the initiative is still with me. But no matter what, to fight with such an opponent with all my strength is not a waste of my life." These were Diwu Qingro's words. Diwu Qingro could clearly feel that the experts in the camp were looking at him in a very different light after he had used the rumors to create momentum for himself. This gave Diwu Qingro a kind of pressure and a kind of fighting spirit. It gave him a feeling of floating. This was not a feeling of complacency. Rather, it was a feeling of, the goal of a lifetime of hard work is right in front of you. At my fingertips. The Diwu clan for more than 10,000 years had been thinking of reviving the clan's reputation. But under the wings of the Zhuge clan, it was suppressed once it got better. It had become the extravagant hope of countless generations. Now they finally saw the dawn. And it was the dawn of unifying the world. Because he didn't expect that the Diwu clan actually had such a strong backer. Dharma Supreme. There has been no action for 2 days, Diwu Qingro thought secretly. Presumably the opponent can't wait anymore, right? Then it should be time for him to deploy the next step of the plan now. Thinking, Diwu Qingro walked toward the big tent. It was daytime now. Commander-in-Chief, the opponent has made a move. Halfway there, someone quickly came to report. Oh. Diwu Qingro smiled secretly. The opponent really couldn't wait anymore. According to the intelligence, the opponent seems to have a large number of people coming here now, as if it's a decisive battle. That person reported nervously. A large number of people? Like a decisive battle? Diwu Qingro almost laughed. This is really funny. With the opponent's strength, what right does he have to fight with us? He can only drag it out slowly, and definitely won't have a decisive battle. Yes. Diwu Qingro said, in that case the opponent is coming. Suddenly he paused and said, repeat what you said just now, don't miss a single word. That person was startled. He recalled and said, according to the intelligence, the opponent seems to have a large number of people coming here now, as if it's a decisive battle. Is it this sentence? That's right. Diwu Qingro nodded. It is this sentence, and this sentence has the word, seems. Is this what the intelligence said? Yes. That person nodded. Seems. Her seems. Diwu Qingro shook his head. Seems to have a large number of people. Really interesting. Pass down the order, summon all the leaders of the super clans for a meeting. Yes. The sooner the better. Yes. In just a breath's time, everyone had gathered. In the middle of the tent, Lan Mafeng was guarding the communication jade, not moving at all. Now, his mission was to support and maintain the communication jade with his own cultivation and ensure that the communication was smooth. Originally, this didn't require an expert of his level, but now that the battle was urgent, no one had any objections when Diwu Qingro suggested that Lan Mafeng guarded. Everyone was already seated and all eyes were on Diwu Qingro. Any new news? Diwu Qingro asked Lan Mafeng. No, only news just came. Lan Mafeng said, a large number of people are coming here, and they've already passed the area where our messenger is. Is it just one team? Or several? Diwu Qingro asked again. One team. Lan Mafeng replied immediately. Is there anything special about the opponent's form and the posture they took when they took action before this? Frowning, Diwu Qingro asked calmly. It's exactly the same as any of the previous operations, just that this time, the scale is a little bigger. Lan Mafeng answered honestly. But this scale is a little bigger, but there's a seems. Frowning, Diwu Qingro asked, is that so? Lan Mafeng considered for a moment and replied, yes. Contact that side immediately. Diwu Qingro waved his hand. Find out what this seems is about. Lan Mafeng transmitted his cultivation at once, and the communication jade lit up at once. Then a message came from the other side. What's the matter, Master Lan? The other side reacted very quickly, which meant that they had been waiting in front of the communication jade all along. Diwu Qingro nodded lightly. Why is there, seems, in the intelligence just now? Lan Mofeng immediately asked. Seems like a large number of people are coming here? What does seems mean? As if it's a decisive battle. Since when can you evaluate the decisive battle? Chapter 1459. After arranging the guards of the Yi and Shao clans, Diwu Qingru looked at the other three clans. After thinking for a while, he continued, the Shi clan has just finished a long journey. Although they can't be idle now, they can't join the battle immediately either. They can stay between the two clans. If they need help, they can rush over. If not, they can stay put. Yes. Shi Qiji of the Shi clan nodded. Now he had learned his lesson and didn't dare to be rude. And Diwu Qingrou's arrangement was so meticulous that he sympathized with the Shi clan's physical strength. Even if he had just arrived, he couldn't help but feel a warm feeling of being not neglected. Diwu Qingru smiled and continued. Also, the experts of the Qin and Ling clans, Elder Qin, please lead people to leave the current camp and ambush 50 miles in front of the Zhuge clan camp. And the Ling clan, ambush 50 miles in front of the Zhuge clan camp. If the enemy doesn't come in, they can retreat easily and leave unharmed. But if they go this way, they can ignore them. But if they come over and realize that things are not going well and want to go back, kill them immediately. At that time, send a signal. The Zhuge clan, Yi clan, Shao clan and Zhuge clan will attack together. The big clans will trap the enemy here. Then the law enforcement officers will move out immediately and wipe them all out. Yes. Everyone agreed at the same time. Wipe them all out. These two words aroused everyone's battle enthusiasm and confidence. Diwu Qingrou's arrangement now was equivalent to turning their own situation into a huge trap. If the enemy really came, they would have more confidence to escape. Almost no. A mere 300 people wanted to attack the camp of thousands of supreme martial artists? What a joke. Our previous camp was Fengchao's Feng Quebec. That was an ancient military formation that took care of everything. It could deal with the enemy's army and mobilize all the troops to resist. However, that was a normal military formation that was suitable for victory. But it wasn't suitable for a war situation where all the experts were, especially when the enemy attacked suddenly. We can't use that kind of military formation all the more. Diwu Qingru explained softly. Every time at such a time he would feel a little annoyed. But he had to. Because now he hadn't reached the point of absolute control. And now he needed to win people's hearts all the more so. If the enemy comes, they will definitely advance and retreat quickly. Diwu Qingru said, they simply won't linger in battle. According to my estimation, this should be a lightning-fast battle that belongs to assassins. Therefore all parties must react quickly. Yes. Also, we've changed our formation, but the enemy doesn't know. However, the other party definitely had a way to find out. Therefore, I request that no clan be in position at the same time. The original camp could not be revoked, and there had to be night patrols as usual. However, we must also create a commotion over there to show that we have reinforcements. In that case, if it was an ordinary military strategist, he would definitely retreat because we were already prepared. However, the other party was definitely not an ordinary person. He would definitely be able to determine where our weakness was at first glance from our arrangements, and then he would attack us in an extremely short amount of time. And we are surrounded by tight walls on all sides. Our weakness is the army. Diwu Qingru insipidly said, the lack of an army is the biggest taboo for a military strategist. Although the other party thought that I would not make such a mistake, their attack was very sudden. Therefore, it was imperative for me to deploy the troops to the most dangerous position at this time. Ordinary people would not dare to attack the army at this time, but the other party would definitely dare. Because this is the most efficient attack under the current circumstances, and also the most fatal. Moreover, he has already deployed my men. Therefore, once the army is attacked, everyone must immediately return to reinforce, and form an encirclement at the first moment. Assume the posture of a reinforcement army, and force the other party to escape. Once the other party escapes, the ambush will immediately explode and intercept them, and we will catch up from behind. At that time, it will be the real encirclement. Diwu Qingru said as he used his finger to point out the location on the map. Everyone nodded repeatedly. Just this arrangement alone meant that the commanders of both sides had already silently exchanged a few blows with each other. Of course, the other party may think that the reinforcements from the two horns are a bluff. Therefore there is still the possibility of an attack, and no matter where they attack we must reinforce at the same time, outflank, drive away and then encircle a second time to annihilate. Diwu Qingro insipidly said, if someone messes up this plan, then, it is really a joke with our common lives. We will definitely not neglect it. Everyone said in unison. In addition, I will follow the pre-agreed flag signals, and according to the changes in the situation, change, transfer, or make other arrangements at any time. Everyone must remember, no matter how harsh the battle is, there must be a dedicated person to watch the flag signals. Then the first reaction will be made. Yes. Contact each other. If there is a purpose, pay attention to the sound transmission. Any long howl or roar may be guessed by the other party. Yes. Diwu Qingrou's last sentence could be said to have hit the weak spot of these people. Which one of these masters was not once invincible in the world? They were already used to roaring when they were excited, or roaring when they needed to communicate. These were the characteristics of martial artists in Jianghu. However, if they did this, their companions could hear it and so could the other party. Moreover, the other party was a person whose wisdom was comparable to a monster. Moreover, it was a position that was rumored to not fail for thousands of years. Tribulation's think tank. If such a person could not guess the intention of the roar or howl, and could not see the danger, then it would be an insult to the think tank of tribulation. Diwu Qingro reviewed his plan again and made sure that there was nothing left out. Then he said lightly, "Get ready immediately." Yes. Everyone dispersed one after another. They were swift and decisive as they immediately carried out the orders strictly. Diwu Qingro stood in the big tent with an indifferent look. Two shadows quietly appeared beside him and looked at him with some doubts. "What you are doing seems too comprehensive," Diwu Qingro said lightly. "Not necessarily. The war situation is changeable." Then he did not speak any more. The two shadows were stunned. Diwu Qingro closed his eyes and rested. However, he knew in his heart that if they really wanted to attack, they would not attack the army. The only thing that seemed to be overlooked was the benefit that Diwu Qingro had prepared for the other party. The reinforcement of a clan's strength was to minimize the loss. Diwu Qingro knew very well that he had not completely controlled it. If the other party really attacked, his plan would be ruined by someone. At that time, the blink of an eye would be the time for the other party to escape. Then he could use this as a pretext to make use of the loss to make his prestige reach the real peak. This was his own benefit. Of course, if he could really devour the other party, Diwu Qingro would not hesitate at all. "Mo Tianji, what do you, the master of calculation and manipulation, want this time?" Diwu Qingro was deep in thought, and his brows were somewhat heavy. "As the master of calamity sword, where is Chu Yang hiding now, preparing to give me a fatal blow?" The Li clan troops were like white lightning, traveling 5,700 miles at an extremely fast speed. Now they were already in the northwest direction of the Allied army camp. The distance was less than 200 miles. In the first 500 miles, Mo Tianji had asked everyone to stay close to the ground and travel quickly. With the help of the wind and snow, they were like a snow-white carpet that continued to slide forward. In such a place where the wind and snow were raging, even someone with good eyesight would need to be very close to see that there were hundreds of people moving here. Mo Tianji definitely did not send out 200 to 300 people as Diwu Qingro had guessed. Instead he sent out all the peak forces of the Li clan. Even the lightly injured had come this time. 332 people. More than 500 martial saints of all levels and close to 400 supreme martial artists of all levels. This was the most luxurious troop that the Li clan could bring out now. Such a lineup was more than double of the 200 to 300 people that Diwu Qingro had guessed. But from this, it could be seen how big the risk and gamble that Mo Tianji had mentioned were. If the enemy saw through it, the consequences would be huge. But it was still not done. Mo Tianji waved his hand and all the troops knelt down neatly, looking at the vast snowfield in front of them. Mo Tianji raised two fingers. Ao Shiyun and Rui Badong moved at the same time, quietly gliding past. But their speed was as fast as shooting stars. Even though they were moving in front of everyone still felt that they could not see clearly. It was as if a gust of wind had blown up a patch of snow, and the snow danced in the wind and disappeared without a trace. Everyone was shocked. Tribulation was indeed amazing. This concealment technique was really amazing. This was a matter of great importance. Mo Tianji would not trust the Li clan when it came to scouting the enemy. Besides, with the concealment technique that Chu Yang had personally taught them, and the strength of Ao Shiyun and Rui Budong's clans, they were the best candidates to carry out this mission. They were even more confident than supreme martial artists. And this was also the reason why Mo Tianji had chosen to bring Ao Shiyun and Rui Budong instead of Gu Duxing and the rest. It was for the sake of reliable intelligence at this time. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Ao Shiyun and Rui Budong completely disappeared with a sweep of the wind and snow. Mo Tianji lowered his head and buried it in the wind and snow. Everyone did the same. The wind and snow swept and buried the whole group in an instant. Mo Tianji's actions and aura were filled with confidence. It was as if he was absolutely certain that nothing would go wrong. This made some of the people whose hearts were thumping instantly calm down. Not long after Ao Shiyun appeared in the wind and snow. He practically burrowed under the layer of snow and came in front of Mo Tianji. "Everything is as you expected," Ao Shiyun said. His voice was very low, but the few people around Mo Tianji heard it. They were instantly overjoyed. Chapter 1460. Everything is as you expected. This sentence was almost a representation of victory. Li Wubua exhaled deeply, almost imperceptibly. A huge rock in his heart was finally lifted. After all, this was a risk. The Li clan was so empty that it made one's hair stand on end. If Diwu Qingru had seen through Mo Tianji's deployment and sent people to launch a long-distance attack, it would be a joke to return now. It would definitely be too late. Although he had cooperated with Mo Tianji to formulate this operation out of high trust, Li Wubua was still worried that Diwu Qingru would see through it. After all, the other party was definitely not someone to be trifled with. As expected, he didn't see through it now. Only then could he truly be at ease. On the other side, high up in the snowy sky, Chu Yang looked at the Li clan army and laughed softly. "I see. Mo Tianji is really cunning?" Dong Wuxiang was stunned. "What?" Not to mention Dong Wuxiang, even the experienced Mo Lei was a little puzzled. From the sky, Diwu Qingru's deployment is basically invulnerable. Other than attacking the Li clan based on the exchange of benefits, Mo Tianji can't possibly have any other way. Chu Yang smiled and said, "Wrong?" When Diwu Qingru made such a decision, he had already been fooled. As he spoke, Chu Yang took a breath and said, "If it were me, I would have been fooled too." "I don't understand." Dong Wuxiang, Mo Lei and Mo Qingwu shook their heads together. "It's okay if you don't understand. You will understand immediately when you continue watching." Chu Yang smiled. On the other side, at a secret location, Gu Duxing, Xie Danxiong, GMO, Luo Kadi and the other three looked at the Allied forces camp in a daze. All of them were confused. What exactly is going on? Why can't I understand it at all? How are we going to cooperate? Don't tell me we don't need to cooperate with this operation? Xie Danxiong was also a little confused. Of course, GMO and Luo Kadi didn't consider it at all. The two of them crossed their legs and were extremely satisfied. To these two, they were completely uninterested in what Mo Tianji's deployment was. They just needed to rush in. They needed to retreat and run. "We have to start the operation immediately." Mo Tianji said in a low voice but very slowly, 10 small teams attack together. Follow the first plan and move in the formation that we rehearsed beforehand. And according to the rehearsal. Once it's over, retreat immediately. "All right." Li Wubua. Mo Tianji said, "I will accompany the team to advance. When we reach a certain location, I will follow you. I will stop at the designated location. And that position will be my first command post. Then, if you need me to command, I will use the secret code according to the agreement, and then come to the second finger wave. I only have the time to command twice each time." None of them lasted for more than a breath. "After the second time, I will immediately return to the rendezvous point to wait for you. At that time there would only be one choice. All of you retreat." Li Wubua said sincerely, "I hope that both of your commands won't happen." Mo Tianji smiled and said, "The other side will definitely react. Therefore, out of these two commands at least one of them has to succeed. Therefore, it's best if you don't hold on to such wishful thinking. The enemy is far more powerful than you can imagine." "Yes." Li Wubua nodded sternly and asked, "What about the second plan?" Mo Tianji faintly shook his head. "There's no need for plan B." Li Wubua took a deep breath. There was a look of shock in his eyes as he replied, "All right. Check your equipment one last time. Poisons, hidden weapons, poison weapons as well as equipment for retreating." Mo Tianji said in a deep voice. "Check complete. Don't forget, no one is allowed to make a sound." Mo Tianji looked at the snowflakes floating in the sky. Looking straight ahead, he shouted softly, "Let's go." These two words were spoken calmly and slowly. However, everyone suddenly felt as if the sky was filled with blood. All the men and horses were divided into 10 neat squads. Then they shot out like 10 sharp arrows side by side. Then they shot out like lightning. Mo Tianji, Ao Shiyun and Rui Budong followed the team and stayed at the back. Ao Shiyun said, "If not, what will you do?" Mo Tianji slowly shook his head. "Definitely not. But this time, if Diwu Qingru doesn't have the intention of annihilating everyone and still wants to exchange benefits with you, the risk of Plan B is too great. I really don't understand why you are so sure." Mo Tianji said indifferently, "I've been exchanging benefits with him all this while. In fact, there were a few times when I was indeed in a situation where I had no choice but to exchange victories with him. However, the other side's reserve team never showed up. But I can feel that Diwu Qingru definitely has a reserve team." Ao Shiyun nodded. "Yes, if a wise man of this level doesn't have a reserve team every time he goes to war, that would be too strange. And this time, I deliberately made such a gesture. It's tantamount to an exchange of benefits. Diwu Qingru will definitely think that I have the same guesses as him. At this time he will also be prepared to exchange benefits with me. But he wants to see my strength and leave a backup plan. If he doesn't leave a backup plan, he won't be Diwu Qingru. And this backup plan will definitely be annihilation. If there's a chance, it's Diwu Qingru's lifelong wish to defeat the mastermind in one go. Although he himself doesn't believe that he can defeat me so early, he has to try. And what I want to destroy is his attempt." Mo Tianji said, "I don't want to achieve great results in this operation. Instead, I want to tell Diwu Qingru that if he wants to achieve his goal, he must exchange benefits with me. Otherwise, if I can fight such a battle once, I can fight it a second time. Unless he sends out a team full of 8th grade supreme martial artists to fight us to the death. And now, I haven't forced the big clans to that extent. Diwu Qingru won't have that kind of authority. For now, my first plan is already enough." Mo Tianji said, "I'm just waiting for Diwu Qingru to change. But we're the main attack and he's defending now. He has to wait for us to start attacking before he can react, and this will be a beat slower. But as long as he responds, I can immediately respond to his deployment. I've set up so many deceptive formations to confuse him. My goal is to make Diwu Qingru slow at the start. That's all." Mo Tianji said quietly, "It's about time." As they spoke, they had already traveled 100 miles. Suddenly the 10 teams scattered like shooting stars. 5 of them went east and the other 5 went west. Then they scattered again, forming 10 complete teams. In 10 different directions they outflanked and disappeared in a flash. Snow fluttered and the world was silent. A faint smell of blood spread in the air. Mo Tianji stood on top of a pile of snow. Ao Shiyun and Rui Budong were beside him. Under this pile of snow there should be a slope. Among these mountains and ravines, it was completely inconspicuous. He stood quietly. He didn't even look at the place where the battle was about to begin. He casually grabbed a handful of snow and squeezed it lightly in his hand. Then he squeezed it into a ball of ice. Then he grabbed another handful of snow. 2 balls of snow were squeezed into a ball of ice the size of a human head in his hand. Then he took out a small knife and focused on carving on this ball of ice. As if there was no one around. As if nothing had happened. Suddenly, a dull sound came from afar. Suddenly, a sharp and terrifying scream tore through the air. Enemy attack. Then the cry came to an abrupt end. Immediately after, there were sounds of chaos from both sides, followed by angry curses, warning whistles, and miserable screams. There was a loud bang and it seemed like someone had exchanged palms. Ding ding dang dang, the sound of iron being struck rang out. Of course, it was 1,000 times denser than the sound of iron being struck. White blades clashed. The ground under their feet also shook violently. Mo Tianji smiled faintly. He didn't raise his head and continued carving. Everyone thought that I was going to attack the Allied forces' camp. Who would have thought that my goal was to attack Diwu Qingru's ambush? I used myself as bait to lure Diwu Qingru into splitting his forces. I hooked Diwu Qingru's ambition and made him send troops to intercept and kill us on our way back. And now, I want to kill the 2 troops that you sent. Allied forces? I have no interest. The sound of fighting rang out. Ao Shiyun and Rui Budong turned their heads at the same time. They focused their vision and saw that in that direction, there was an arm that had been detached from a human body flying. White snow flew up fiercely. There was also a conspicuous stream of blood in the air. In an instant, that small piece of flying snow turned into a strange pink color and fell down rapidly. The two turned their heads and looked at Emotianji. Emotianji was focused on carving the ice ball in his hand. His eyes were focused and he didn't move at all. It was as if at this moment, this ice ball was all of his interest and attracted all of his attention. It was as if the fight in the distance had nothing to do with him at all. In the eyes of outsiders, Emotianji's current appearance was undoubtedly superhuman. They would definitely admire him from the bottom of their hearts. In the face of such an earth-shattering battle, how could he be so calm? How could he be an ordinary person? But Ao Shiyun and Rui Budong looked at each other. Rui Budong's mouth twitched. He said telepathically, "This guy Emotianji, will he die if he doesn't show off for a while?" Ao Shiyun almost laughed out loud. He nodded very seriously. Emotianji carefully carved, and the crystal ball in his hand slowly turned into the shape of a human head. The facial features were clear and the eyebrows and eyes were vivid. He even carved 3 strands of beard on the chin, and it looked very handsome. Especially the pair of deep and silent eyes, with a kind of calmness that could see through the world. It was even more lifelike. Emotianji actually used such an ice ball to carve such a human head. Then he held it in his hand and looked at it. Then he added half a neck to this human head. But, below the neck, he used his palm to cut it so that it became as neat as a knife. Then he looked at this human head carved from snow and ice. He smiled silently and held it in his hand just like that. He began to slowly carve the hair. Chapter 1461. In the camp of the Allied forces, Diwu Qingru was waiting for the enemy to attack. There was a calm smile on his face. No matter which camp the enemy attacked, he would react immediately. The arrangements he had made beforehand would also be put to use immediately. Diwu Qingru had enough confidence to resolve the battle that the enemy had deliberately planned this time. And he would definitely not let the enemy gain too much of an advantage. Emotianji, you cut off half of my benefits last time. This time, if you aren't greedy, I will cut off half of your benefits too. If you are greedy, I will leave all these people here. Kill them all. Right at this moment, a sharp and long howl came from the front. It was a tragic howl that sounded as if someone's throat had been torn apart. Enemy attack. Diwu Qingru raised his head abruptly. For the first time, there was surprise in his eyes. Then, from the left and right in front of him came roaring battle cries. It actually came from the direction of the Qin clan and Ling clan that were in charge of the ambush, and not here that he had planned for a long time. Diwu Qingru's expression changed. He immediately shouted, "Send the order. Yi clan, Zhuge clan, Shao clan. The 4 clans are to move out immediately. Reinforce the Qin clan and Ling clan with all their might." Yes. Lan Mofeng immediately gave the order. Diwu Qingru looked ahead with a cold and sharp gaze. Feeling the tremors under his feet, his heart tightened. He had been tricked. And this time, Diwu Qingru was sincerely convinced. He had deployed for a long time, but all of them were in the air. The enemy had no intention of attacking the camp at all. Right from the start, it was a plan to lure the snake out of its hole. The enemy had seen through his deployment and guessed his plan. Then, the enemy's real target was the 2 ambushing armies that he had deployed outside to trap the enemy. The Ling clan. The Qin clan. They had used their own team as bait. They had used the accurate intelligence of the Allied forces' intelligence personnel to set up a trap and used his habits of using troops to guess his plans. Then, they had used their superior military strength and a thunderous attack to deal with his ambush. Emotianji's use of troops was actually so strange. Diwu Qingru's eyes were deep and sharp. He murmured, "Emotianji, so your plan was to take down my ambush? Is this a warning?" On the left and right, the 4 teams had already shot out like lightning. Diwu Qingru had already made preparations for the attack. Therefore, this attack was extremely fast. Diwu Qingru's face was as calm as water as he looked ahead. The sound from afar suddenly grew louder like a tsunami. At the same time, there were countless snowflakes, ice cubes, rocks and trees. Like the Big Bang of the universe, it suddenly shot up into the sky with a loud bang. With a loud boom, some of the tents on this side suddenly jumped up from the ground. It landed crookedly. This is definitely not 200 or 300 people. Could it be that the Li clan has come out in full force? Diwu Qingru's gaze flickered. He said, "Send out the flag signal." Oh no, pass down the order directly. Flag signals were meant to be used when the enemy attacked the camp, and at this moment, the sky was filled with snow, and at such a distance, flag signals were useless. Everyone charge. The law enforcers cut in from the right. If we can block their path of retreat, we might be able to wipe out the Li clan today. Yes. The Shi family should rush over and join forces with the Yi and Xiao families. We must hold the enemy back. Yes. The Lan family doesn't need to protect me. Immediately cut in from the left toward the northwest. Even if we have to vomit blood, we must cut off their path of retreat. Yes. Another 3 teams rushed up like lightning. Beside Diwu Qingro, there were only 2 second-grade supreme martial artists left. They were under the Dharma Supreme's orders to protect Diwu Qingro's safety and not leave his side. You dare to come out in full force, so do I. Diwu Qingro said calmly, I dare to fight, but you don't. In this battle, what I lose is just some prestige and benefits that I'm about to get, but what you lose is your foundation. This time, is the entire Li clan participating in the battle? One of the shadows asked. Definitely. Diwu Qingro shook his head and smiled. I really didn't expect that the master of calculation and manipulation Mo Tianji, who is rumored to be cautious by nature, would make such a shocking move this time. I fell behind in this battle and didn't see through the enemy, so I lost this time. Even if these people are really surrounded and annihilated here, I've also lost this time. Mo Tianji, you're amazing. Diwu Qingro looked ahead and paid attention to the voices coming from the front. He was judging the situation in his heart, but he was sincerely praising Mo Tianji. Since the Li clan is taking such a risk, isn't this a great opportunity for us? Should we, the people in the dark, join in the battle? One of the shadows asked Diwu Qingro. Diwu Qingro was about to speak when he suddenly paused and said, No need to join in the battle. During this period of time, there have been many people on your side exerting pressure on our side. If any of them are recognized, the consequences are not something that can be compensated by the destruction of the Li clan, which is already at death's door. The 2 shadows nodded and didn't speak anymore. Diwu Qingro was absolutely right. In a battle between supreme martial artists, there were basically divine sense imprints. Especially supreme martial artists who had experienced the danger of death, they would be very sensitive to the aura of their enemies. In an intense battle, no one would be able to control that kind of aura freely. If these people were to join in the battle, the possibility of being recognized was more than half. But now, even if there was only a 1/10 chance, Diwu Qingro couldn't take the risk. Once he was recognized, it would mean that Diwu Qingro would have nowhere to hide. All his previous efforts would go down the drain. Let's go. Diwu Qingro said, I'm already late. If we don't want to lose too much in this battle, I have to take command personally. If the battle isn't over by the time I arrive, so what if I'm late? The 2 shadows carried Diwu Qingro and flew forward. At this moment, Mo Tianji had already carved a warrior's hairpin for the head. With the last slash, this head carved out of ice and snow actually seemed to come alive. For a moment, a refined aura suddenly emerged. The hair, beard, and skin of this head seemed to become like a real person. Ao Shiyun and Rui Butong were just about to see who he was carving when Mo Tianji turned his wrist and kept the head in his sleeve. He reached out and grabbed, and an icicle suddenly rose from the ground. He circulated his energy and solidified it at the same time. It was as hard as gold and stone. The battle in the distance had only lasted for a few minutes. They could faintly hear someone shouting, The reinforcements haven't arrived. Retreat first. Retreat first. Mo Tianji heard it clearly. It was Qin Jianlong's voice that day. Speaking of which, the Qin clan was really unlucky. Their mounts were more or less affected in such a world of ice and snow. Furthermore, if the gale beasts stayed in the snow for a long period of time, their eyes would be affected and they wouldn't be able to see clearly. Therefore they all stayed in the campsite. They specially made a tent for them to rest. If they were all here at this moment, their strength would be boosted even further. Their battle prowess would also increase by 20%. Although the enemy had an overwhelming advantage in terms of numbers, and it was a sneak attack, they wouldn't have been killed so miserably in just one exchange. In the worst-case scenario, the heavily injured could still escape. But now there was no such convenience at all. Less than half of the Ling clan and Qin clan members were left desperately trying to break out and retreat rapidly. The Li clan members didn't give chase but retreated immediately. They galloped towards the northwest. The 2 groups of people who were fighting fervently actually parted ways at the same time. One group fled towards the south. The other retreated towards the north. With a swoosh, the distance between them was pulled apart. Almost at this moment, the reinforcements from the south also suddenly appeared in the snowstorm. They flew over like the wind and their voices were thunderous. Li Wubwa. Li Wubwa didn't make a sound. Following the retreat of the main group, he was like a gust of snow dust that drifted with the wind. Behind him, the Yi clan and the other 3 super clans chased after them at full speed, their momentum soaring. Mo Qinji frowned and said indifferently, "1." Ao Shiyun howled into the sky. "Awu, awu." His voice was strong and powerful, shooting straight into the sky and exploding everywhere like a thunderbolt. When the Li clan members who were retreating heard this sound that was either a wolf's howl or a dragon's roar, they turned around and attacked in unison. But everyone was cursing in their hearts. What the heck, wasn't it supposed to be a dragon's roar? They didn't hear a damn dragon's roar. Instead, they heard a lewd male wolf's roar that seemed to be in heat. How fucking creepy. Yi Xiaoyao's eyes flickered. He shouted, 10 people rush to that small slope and see who's commanding. Take him down at all costs." Before he finished his words, 10 experts had already pounced forward at lightning speed. The remaining people quickly clashed with the Li clan members who had turned around to fight. The experts of the Yi clan, Shao clan, Zhuge clan and the other 4 super clans instantly fell into a tough battle. The remaining experts of the Chen clan and Ling clan who had just escaped also pounced back one after another without caring about their injuries. The battle was about to reach a stalemate. Under such circumstances, the Li clan was almost destined to be completely annihilated. Kill? Right at this moment there was a sudden roar. Countless snow-white Li clan members who had been recuperating flew out from the left and right like divine soldiers descending from the heavens. Before they landed, they had already started their killing moves. First, densely packed hidden weapons shot out with a swoosh. Instantly, the whole sky turned into a bright blue color. Tens of thousands of hidden weapons poured down from the sky, the ground, front, back, left and right towards the people who were fighting in this chaotic battle. It was a completely indiscriminate attack, as if they wanted to shoot down their own people who were mixed with the enemy viciously. According to Mo Qinji's arrangement, out of the 10 teams, only 1 had participated in the attack previously. The other 4 teams were put to use at this moment, and they were used to determine the outcome of the battle. The hidden weapons are poisonous. Be careful not to get pierced by them. Xiao Jingyan shouted angrily. Hearing the swoosh sounds of the hidden weapons and seeing that shocking color, Xiao Jingyan almost ground all his teeth into pieces. Despicable and shameless. Yi Xiaoyao almost vomited blood. Li Wubua, is this the glorious means of your super clans? I am ashamed to be in the same team as you. However, no one answered him. The Li clan members who had just started the chaotic battle clenched their teeth neatly at this moment. They crushed a mouthful of antidote pills and swallowed them, assimilating them into their blood vessels. They didn't dodge the blue hidden weapons at all and charged towards the enemy even more recklessly. Today is the birthday of the book friend, Mu Baijin Alliance leader. Happy birthday to him. Every year there will be a day like this. Chapter 1462. The sudden attack was too sudden. Especially to the Alliance army, the fact that the other party could send 500 people here to ambush them was already far beyond their expectations. A tragic battle to the death was expected by almost everyone. But they never expected that the other party would actually leave a reserve team in such a situation. And from the looks of it, there were really quite a lot of them. This was completely out of his expectations. And the reserve team used hidden weapons right from the start. Everyone threw out countless hidden weapons in the blink of an eye. The hidden weapons were too sudden and too concentrated. Attacking indiscriminately in a chaotic battlefield, that kind of power was definitely impressive. The Alliance army could only deal with the opponent's reckless attacks on one hand and conjure up streaks of sword light to block the hidden weapons on the other hand. They didn't dare to dodge. There were people in front and behind them. Who knew whose blade they would end up under if they dodged? It was still okay if they were on the same side, but if it was the enemy? Wouldn't that be like delivering food to the enemy? And it was delivered to their mouths by the best service? The clanging sounds were mixed with painful cries and irritated shouts. Obviously, many people had already been hit. The hidden weapons landed on the people from both sides quickly and fiercely. Everyone was a super expert with strong cultivation. These hidden weapons that had already dispersed their power couldn't be fatal at all. Even against low-level supreme martial artists, they could only scratch a little of the skin and couldn't enter the body any further. But just this little bit of skin and flesh would cause the flesh to turn blue, and the poison spread rapidly. Everyone felt their bodies go numb. The Li clan people were also hit by the hidden weapons. The cut skin and flesh on their bodies turned blue in an instant, but then the color changed immediately. The antidote immediately showed its effect and the blood turned red. The poison was immediately neutralized. On one hand it was a little numb, but on the other hand it was fine. Although the poison was strong and could kill ordinary people, to supreme martial artists, it wasn't fatal. At most, it would numb them for a moment and they would return to normal in the next moment. However, in a battlefield that was constantly changing, this period of numbness was beneficial for both sides. Was enough. The Li clan people's counterattack was swift and fierce. Firstly, the indiscriminate attacks from both sides were very powerful. Secondly, they had an absolute advantage in terms of numbers. Thirdly, some high-level supreme martial artists couldn't even use some big moves in such a chaotic battle, for fear of accidentally hurting their own people. At this moment, the Li clan people really dominated. Just like that, the curtains of this massacre suddenly opened. Blade after blade, sword after sword, streaks of bright red blood with a hint of blue shot up into the sky. And before the hidden weapons started to fall, the large group of Li clan clansmen who were releasing hidden weapons from both sides had already charged into the battle. All of them became one with their swords, and instantly, dazzling light pillars and light balls covered in sparks of electricity wreaked havoc everywhere. Screams rang out one after another. At this moment, in the face of the Li clan's attack, the allied forces of the four great clans had actually been forced into a complete disadvantage. This phenomenon. Yi Xiaoyao and Xiao Jingyan were so angry that their stomachs almost burst. Then, together with Ao Shiyun and Rui Badong, they escaped into the wind and snow like lightning, disappearing without a trace. If Diwu Qingru had been slower at the beginning, he would have been slower. Mo Tianji chuckled. His voice floated in the white snow, slow down by a beat. That's the winning hand. The 10 Yi clan experts rushed to the slope and only saw a straight snow pillar. On the snow pillar there was a lifelike human head. On the snow pillar, there were a few lines of elegant handwriting. They couldn't help but look at each other. Fight! Yi Xiaoyao shouted. Xiao Jingyan sent the Li clan experts who were attacking him flying and gave the order to attack from all sides. Although many low-level supreme martial artists and martial saints died because they were caught off guard, there weren't many high-level supreme martial artists. Figures flashed in the distance and there were also people rushing over from both sides. A long shout came from afar. Go! With that one word, everyone from the Li clan suddenly gave up on the fight. Some of them even took a direct hit and turned to leave. They left cleanly and without any hesitation. Mo Qianji's second change didn't work in the end. Seeing the three groups of people in the distance, Mo Qianji immediately knew that Diwu Qingru had made the right decision. So he immediately ordered a retreat. Only the 10th group was able to withstand Li Xiongtu's slash. With a loud bang they were sent flying backwards by the recoil. Li Ju, who was beside him, suddenly staggered and almost fell to the ground. Li Xiongtu was shocked and reached out to grab him. He saw Li Ju spit out a mouthful of blood on Li Xiongtu's face. Li Xiongtu only felt his vision blur. He grabbed Li Ju and was about to fly away. Li Ju panted. Xiongtu. Li Xiongtu said, "There's no time. Go." Li Ju panted. He wanted to say something but suddenly his eyes rolled back and he fainted. Li Xiongtu was shocked. The enemies behind had already caught up. He shouted, "Catch him." He shook his hand and threw Li Ju out like a cannonball. But because of this throw he slowed down. The sound of a golden blade cutting through the air could be heard. Behind him there were people taking deep breaths. That was the prelude to a powerful air-splitting palm. Li Ju, who was flying out, had a strange look of pride on his face. He secretly activated his cultivation and landed in his own camp as light as a feather. Then he started to run. Li Xiongtu was watching with concern. He was stunned when he saw this. But this was because the enemies behind him had already caught up. He roared and swung his broadsword backward. With a bang it clashed with two swords. The two people opposite him didn't expect him to have such innate strength. At the same time, their bodies cracked and blood flowed out of their 7 orifices. Li Xiongtu roared and spat out a mouthful of blood. He staggered a few steps and cut down a second-grade supreme martial artist who came close. Then he dragged his long sword and retreated like a gust of wind. With a swoosh the space was torn apart. A strong wind from a palm hit Li Xiongtu's back crazily. Li Xiongtu let out a ferocious roar. Without any reluctance, he threw out the broadsword in his hand. With a whoosh, it brought out a magnificent golden radiance. It cut out a clear black hole in the space and shot towards the palm wind. And he himself pushed out with both palms. Boom! Li Xiongtu used the force to fly up. His majestic body bent in the wind and snow and flew out 70 to 80 feet. He flew backward and spat out blood. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. Li Xiongtu was the last person of the Li clan to retreat. Although he was seriously injured, he didn't seem to be affected at all. He ran wildly. Every step he took, he covered a distance of hundreds of feet. His speed was almost beyond the limit, causing the pursuers behind him to continuously throw out their palms. Countless hidden weapons, swords and sabers were directly thrown, whistling through the air, but they all missed. Yi Xiaoyao and Xiao Jingyan were furious. How could it be so easy? You want to leave after killing so many of us? If we let you go, we will be idiots. We have to catch up even if we have to risk our lives. Yi Xiaoyao roared angrily. Together with Xiao Jingyan, they chased after the Li clan. In the wind and snow, a group of people in front ran with all their might while some people behind ran with all their might. Between the two groups, Li Xiongtu was running with all his might. There were so many people of the Li clan in front of him, but none of them looked back. Li Xiongtu only felt that his chest was about to explode. His pride didn't allow him to ask for help, but he was puzzled. Everyone saw that he saved Li Ju just now. Why was it that when others fell behind, someone would immediately pull them to catch up, but when he was so far behind he didn't even look back? Li Ju ran so fast after he landed? What? Li Xiongtu was straightforward, honest and heroic, but he was definitely not an idiot. Li Xiongtu ran with all his might, but he felt a chill in his heart. I tried to repay the Li clan wholeheartedly, but the Li clan really treated me like this? Thinking of Mo Tianji's sneer, repay the Li clan? Repay? Suddenly, a feeling of discouragement rose in his heart. Could it be that I was really being used? Could it be that I was really being used and that I have to give up after being used? Then what am I? Li Xiongtu considered. Li Xiongtu felt that Li Jupan's blood had almost covered his eyes. Li Xiongtu let out a low roar and fiercely spurted out his vital energy. The blood on his eyes had already turned into dregs. He smiled bitterly. Li Ju obviously wasn't injured that badly. That blood was obviously spat on my eyes on purpose. There was a reason why everyone in the Li clan ignored me when I was in a life-and-death situation. For a moment, endless sarcasm rose in Li Xiongtu's heart. Sarcasm towards himself. Even the desire to escape had almost disappeared. If that girl in white was not waiting for him in his courtyard at this moment, he would probably give up, right? Li Xiongtu smiled bitterly in his heart. Thinking of that gentle face, he didn't know where a fierce force came from under his feet. His speed suddenly increased a little. The pursuers were getting closer and closer. The 4 high-level supreme martial artists took the lead and were about to catch up with Li Xiongtu's day. After passing through a valley, the entire mountain suddenly collapsed with a loud rumble. Large rocks smashed into the faces of the experts of the allied forces. At the same time, a majestic voice came from the mountain, "All attack! Kill!" The voice was like gold and iron, sonorous and powerful. Experts. They didn't expect the Li clan to have a third team waiting here. Where did the Li clan get such a strong force? The Li clan members in front shouted in unison. The rhythm was the same as the previous time. Yi Xiaoyao was startled. Xiao Jingyan was also startled. They immediately stopped and activated their martial arts vigorously, waiting for the enemy. Diwu Qingrou's urgent order came from afar. Don't stop. Chase and kill. Don't lose them. But it was this pause that caused the whole mountain to crash down with an earth-shattering momentum. It hit the top of their heads. Chapter 1463. If the supreme martial artists wanted to chase after them, they would still be able to get through even if they had to risk being hit by the stones a few times. However, this was not a good feeling after all, and there were not many people who could get through. If the other party really had an ambush, these people would not be optimistic either. Therefore, although Yi Xiaoyao and Xiao Jingyan heard Diwu Qingrou's shout, they still slowed down by a beat. Since the two of them had stopped in their tracks, the others naturally stopped as well. It was just that they were slow by a beat. The whole mountain had collapsed, and the snow and dust were flying all over the sky, rushing thousands of feet into the sky. They could faintly see Li Xiongtu, who was in front, being hit by the stones and running away with his head full of bruises. The Li clan's team was completely isolated behind the collapsed mountain and could not be seen at all. Xiao Jingyan and Yi Xiaoyao roared at the same time. Both of them raised their forearms at the same time, and with a sound, 2 huge palms suddenly bombarded upwards. The power of 2 8th-grade supreme martial artists working together was simply earth-shattering. Diwu Qingrou's urgent voice came. Don't hit forward. Push straight up to the sky. When Diwu Qingrou's urgent shout came, the 4 huge palms of Yi Xiaoyao and Xiao Jingyan had already formed and slapped out with a boom. They wanted to retract it, but it was too late. The stones of the whole mountain were lifted up by the two at the same time, like pillars supporting the sky, and flew towards the opposite side at a faster speed than falling down. Diwu Qingru sighed and stopped in his tracks. It's over. If it wasn't for this, in the case of an open field of vision, a second-grade supreme martial artist could still keep the other party in check. But now it was completely hopeless. This should be the best countermeasure, a shadow beside him asked doubtfully. Diwu Qingru sighed. The stupidest way is right. How can mere stones kill a supreme martial artist? And when these stones fall to the ground, the mountain will shake and the earth will shake. The snow and dust will cover thousands of miles. By then, it will be as difficult as ascending to the sky to find the other party's trace. If we push them up, we can go through the tunnel. We'll be able to pass under the rocks. When the time comes, we'll have a wide field of vision. The only obstacle will be the snow and dust created by the enemy. That's our goal. Even if they split up, as long as we can catch up to one of them, we'll be able to wipe out at least 1/3 of them and weaken them greatly. In this situation, we can only give up temporarily and act according to the circumstances. Diwu Qingru was somewhat depressed in his heart. He hadn't expected that Mo Tianji wouldn't even give him a chance to confront him head-on. While speaking. On the other side, the sky was indeed filled with snow and dust. Piu, the ground was littered with exploding bombs. Within a radius of several thousand feet, the sky was filled with snow and dust. No matter how good his eyesight was, he couldn't see anything. Yi Xiaoyao and Xiao Jingyan knew that they were in trouble. He immediately used all of his strength to blow away the snow and dust in the air. But when he looked around, there was no trace of the enemy. All that was left in front of his eyes was silvery white. The two of them were dejected. Hide yourselves and bide your time. Diwu Qingru ordered in a soft voice. His eyes were full of confidence, since he has come out on a large scale. There was no way he would be satisfied with just killing 200 or 300 people. So, he must have some follow-up plans in the near future. As long as we are sure that he is still here, we will not fight him directly. We will immediately rush to destroy the Li clan's base camp. Diwu Qingru said softly. There was a strange feeling in his heart. This was the first time in Diwu Qingru's life that he had been defeated in terms of intelligence. Excluding Chu Yang in the lower three heavens, Diwu Qingru didn't think that he had lost in everything in the lower three heavens. Even if he had lost to destiny. And in the end, Diwu Qingru didn't work hard at all. Chu Yang succeeded, but Diwu Qingru also succeeded. It was at that time that the blood-colored fate entered the Diwu clan. Only then did the Diwu clan slowly have the opportunity to become stronger in the upper three heavens. Just like the opportunity now. So, Diwu Qingru didn't think that he had lost. Compared to the goal of his ancestors, he could even say that he had won. But today he had really fallen into someone else's trap. What made Diwu Qingru feel the most defeated was that the enemy had completely figured out every step of his plan. This feeling was indescribable. It wasn't dejection or sadness. Instead, it had turned into a monstrous fighting spirit. Since that's the case, I'll have a good fight with you. Since my backup plan could be seen through, it means that I still have flaws in the way I use troops. You've reminded me of my weakness. I'll pay attention in the future. Thank you, Mo Tianji. However, Diwu Qingru firmly believed that Mo Tianji's objective wasn't as simple as it seemed since he had launched such a big operation. He had mobilized all his forces and rushed for thousands of miles. He definitely wouldn't retreat just like that. If it were him, he wouldn't be satisfied either. So he waited. And he could afford to wait. At this moment, a few people flew to Diwu Qingru. Commander-in-Chief Diwu, the other party's military advisor, left a gift for you. Gift? Diwu Qingru's eyes lit up. What gift? It's this. That person smiled bitterly and took out an item. It was a straight snow pillar. It was as thick as a person's and as tall as a normal person's. It stood upright. At the top of the snow pillar, there was a head carved out of ice and snow. At this moment, Diwu Qingru, Yi Xiaoyao, Xiao Jingyan, Chen Jianlong and the others were collectively stunned. At first glance, this head was carved out of ice and snow. Moreover, it was the kind of snowball that only melted a little bit of ice on the outside but still had snow on the inside. That was why it was so light. However, this person's carving was uncanny and could be said to have reached perfection. Regardless of whether it was the facial features or the 7 apertures of the head, they were all vivid and lifelike. Even the pupils in the eyes were clearly visible. The beard on the chin seemed to be fluttering in the wind. The hair on the head seemed to be meticulously trimmed. The most incredible thing was that this head looked like it was made of ice and snow. They were all pieces of ice and snow, but when you saw his face, you would realize that this person was a living person. His eyebrows showed his character, his eyes showed his wisdom, his nose showed his persistence, and his lips showed indifference and decisiveness. His face. When you looked at it like this, it actually looked like a normal person's face. Even his hair gave everyone the impression that it was black. This kind of illusion. Even his eyes were filled with a kind of calm, indifferent, and strategizing expression. From this side, it seemed that the eyes of this head were quietly watching you. It was the same from the other side. It seemed that the eyes of this statue could move. Was this really carved out of a ball of snow? Moreover, no one had seen this face before. However, this head gave everyone an extremely familiar feeling. It was as if everyone knew this person. He was right beside them. Diwu Qingro looked at this head carefully with an appreciative look on his face. He said lightly, "So similar. So amazing. So determined, so confident, so interesting." Everyone couldn't help but echo, "Yes. So similar." But the next moment, everyone looked at each other and was collectively stunned. So similar. So similar, but who did he resemble? Everyone's eyes turned from the ice sculpture head to Diwu Qingro and suddenly realized. So similar. What? Diwu Qingro. Whether it was the nose, the mouth, or the eyes, this head looked very different from Diwu Qingro. But the kind of aura that was imperceptibly revealed was almost exactly the same as Diwu Qingro's. Although it looked completely different from Diwu Qingro, anyone who had seen Diwu Qingro before would recognize it. Once they saw this head, they would immediately recognize it. This was Diwu Qingro. So calm, so wise, so confident, but also a little cold and indifferent cruelty, and a little awe-inspiring decisiveness. At this moment, everyone's expression changed. Diwu Qingro sighed softly. He has never seen me before. Never. Just from these few exchanges, he was able to guess my temperament and charm. He even specially carved a gift for me, a good gift. Everyone looked at each other in shock. This is the most precious gift I have ever received in my life. Diwu Qingro smiled lightly. One of a kind. This? Commander-in-Chief Diwu, just now you said, so similar, we already understood. But after that you said, so impressive, so determined, so confident, so interesting. What did you mean? Were you referring to the other party? The person who carved this? The genius military advisor of the Li clan, the brain of tribulation? Yi Xiaoyao asked with some difficulty. Yes. Diwu Qingro smiled softly. His eyes were still looking at this sculpture, as if he couldn't bear to part with it and wanted to remember every line. So impressive, it means that a person who has never seen me before can actually use this sculpture to fully express all my aura. So determined, it means that the other party only used a very short time to carve this thing, and it was done in the middle of a battle. It is impossible to carve such a fine sculpture in the middle of a supreme martial artist's battle if he doesn't have the determination to remain calm even if a mountain collapses in front of him. So confident, it means that when he carved, the battle had already begun. He was the one who commanded the battle, but he didn't care at all. Obviously, he was confident that everything was going according to his expectations. So interesting. Haha. Diwu Qingro looked at this sculpture and smiled lightly. If we have guessed wrongly, the neck of this head was cut off cleanly by someone. One sword cut off the head. As he spoke, he picked up this sculpture and showed the neck without looking at it. Cleanly cut off with one sword. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Next to the battlefield where hundreds and thousands of supreme martial artists were fighting, he carved the aura of an enemy he had never seen before without any distractions, and yet everyone admitted that it was irrefutable. What kind of person was this? Diwu Qingro smiled slightly and waved his sleeves. The snowflakes that had just fallen on the snow pillar flew up, revealing the original body of the pillar. On it, a few words were written in a flamboyant style. Chapter 1464. Diwu Qingru, do I look like you? These few words, this one question, gave rise to a strange feeling in everyone's heart. Although it was a question, there was a sense of certainty. It was as if the master of calculation and manipulation was standing in front of them, looking at them with a smile and saying with confidence, "This is Diwu Qingru." Diwu Qingro looked at these words and gently shook his head. He smiled faintly. Does it look like me? Mo Qinji, are you telling me to read war music? Diwu Qingro's eyes were deep as he murmured, but do you know that this sentence has exposed your weakness? Then Diwu Qingru ordered lightly, count the casualties and make proper arrangements. All troops advance. Move the original camp 1,000 miles to the front of this mountain. Diwu Qingru had been tricked and suffered a great loss, but he advanced instead of retreating. Diwu Qingru looked at everyone with a smile, but he had his own thoughts. You mean to warn me to have a sense of propriety when fighting with you? But if I really have a sense of propriety with you, then when your wings are fully grown, I will only be the commander-in-chief, and the Diwu clan will be far from being formed. What's the use of that? Besides, if I have a sense of propriety, won't the battle of the top sages in my Leduo land be impossible? So I know your intentions, but I must defeat you. Commander-in-chief, the casualty statistics are out. Yi Xiaoyao's voice was a little heavy. How is it? The losses are great. The death toll is 200. 15 are seriously injured and 84 are lightly injured. It's almost equivalent to the allied forces of the 3 clans being crippled. Fortunately, the high-level supreme martial artists are not injured. But the bottom forces are almost wiped out. The bottom forces that Yi Xiaoyao was talking about were the saint-level experts below the supreme martial artist level. Now, those saint-level experts who were once looked up to were now at the bottom. It had to be said that this was a kind of irony. How are the casualties? Diwu Qingru asked calmly. I'm afraid, there are no more than 50. Yi Xiaoyao sighed deeply. It's too sudden. It was so sudden that they were caught completely off guard. The Chen family and Ling family were basically unprepared and half of them were wiped out. So, Diwu Qingru remained silent. He said, this is my mistake. The enemy guessed all of my reactions correctly, resulting in my defeat. Very much so. Xiao Jing said, how can you blame the commander-in-chief? It's mainly because that little guy is too cunning. Diwu Qingru solemnly said, an incompetent general will exhaust 1,000 soldiers to death. As the person in charge, I have to shoulder the responsibility. If I shirk the responsibility, then I, Diwu Qingru, will not be qualified to lead the army. The people of the Li clan fled with all their might without stopping. They didn't know how far they had gone either. They only followed Mo Tianji's instructions and changed their formations continuously. After doing this 3 times, he finally saw the wind and snow in front of him. Mo Tianji stood there with a smile on his face. Now everyone was looking at Mo Tianji. It was as if he had seen an immortal. How is it? Very satisfying. Everyone laughed. Well, let me tell you what we should do next. Mo Tianji laughed out loud. He was about to say something when he suddenly turned his gaze, and his complexion turned ice-cold. He shouted, where's Li Xiongtu? Everyone's expression changed. Li Wubo looked around and seemed to have only just realized that Li Xiongtu wasn't around. He couldn't help but turn pale with fright. With a panicked look he shouted, where's Xiongtu? Who saw him? Tell me quickly. The pale and dying Li Ju stood up shakily. His eyes were red. Xiongtu. Xiongtu was in the same group as me. But later on I was injured and was about to be cut into pieces. It was Xiongtu who saved me. My good younger brother Xiongtu. He fell behind because of me. Li Ju looked up to the sky and cried. He was extremely sorrowful. He cried, where is my brother? Xiongtu. Xiongtu. Didn't my brother Xiongtu come back? Oh heavens. Li Ju looked up to the sky and cried. Ao Shiyun and Rue Badong only felt goosebumps all over their bodies. In an instant they actually broke out in cold sweat. Oh my God, it's such a pity that this Grand Duke Li didn't become an actor. His voice was so full of emotion and his emotions were so real. His tears poured down like rain. Li Xiongtu fell behind because he wanted to save you? Mo Tianji had a strange smile on his face. Li Ju beat his chest and stamped his feet. Yes, my brother. Boo. If anything happens to my brother, I don't want to live anymore. Yes, Li Xiongtu fell behind because he wanted to save me. With so many high-level supreme martial artists chasing after him, he should be dead. It's best if he's dead, right? If he's dead, he's a hero. I'm a hero's brother. If tribulation needs a replacement, I'm the first choice. There's no doubt about this. As expected, Mo Tianji's expression changed greatly. He stamped his feet. How did Xiongtu? What should we do? Send a few people back to help him immediately. I'll go. Li Ju jumped up. If he's not completely dead, I'll stab him again. No need. A voice said, I'm back. Although the voice was weak, it didn't change its majesty. It was Li Xiongtu's voice. Li Xiongtu. Ao Shiyun and Rue Badong shouted in surprise at the same time. Li Ju was stunned at once. He slowly turned back. Xiongtu. Li Xiongtu's figure appeared from the wind and snow step by step. He was covered in blood and his head was full of bumps. Apart from the injuries, most of them were from being hit by rocks. Brother? Li Ju finally came back to his senses. He shouted, opened his arms and pounced on him in surprise. "You're back." Li Xiongtu took a step back and didn't hug him. He looked at Li Ju with a strange gaze. He only felt a complicated and inexplicable feeling rising in his heart. At this moment he wanted to cry and laugh at the same time. There was also a feeling that he was below the stage. There was a performance on the stage and he was watching the show below the stage. Watching the show. Ah. Li Xiongtu suddenly had the urge to laugh out loud in ridicule. "Brother, it's me. It's Big Brother." Seeing that Li Xiongtu didn't say anything and had a strange expression, Li Ju was afraid that the other party had already noticed his thoughts. He hurriedly said this. Li Xiongtu nodded. His face flushed red. He was about to speak. Suddenly he spat out a mouthful of blood. He staggered a few steps, lost consciousness and slowly fell down. He was seriously injured from the bitter battle, and an indescribable mental injury. Li Xiongtu couldn't hold on anymore. The direction he fell in was the direction of Ao Shiyun. He fell down after he fainted. It seemed that it was in his subconscious. Even Ao Shiyun, who used to be his enemy, was more reliable than Li Ju, who called himself Big Brother. Li Ju was about to reach out his hand when Ao Shiyun hurriedly caught him. He quickly circulated his energy and checked his body. Then he breathed a sigh of relief and said to Li Ju, "Don't worry, he's fine. He won't die." Then he smiled. "I'll circulate my energy for him again." "Ah, young Master Li. Thank me." Li Ju nodded and thought, "He won't die. That's what worries me the most. What should I thank you for?" "But of course," he said gratefully, "Brother Ao, thank you so much." Ao Shian laughed and patted him on the shoulder. "Thank me. You can't just say empty words. You have to be more practical." Of course. Li Ju nodded. He was speechless. "Damn, you saved the person I wanted to kill the most. Now I have to thank you. And you're trying to extort me? Fuck. What kind of world is this?" At this time, Mo Tianji frowned. He seemed to have heard something and was a little surprised. He said, "Take care of the injured and retreat immediately. Start the operation immediately according to the second variable of the first plan." Yes. The Li clan members followed Mo Tianji and left. Chu Yang revealed himself and smiled. Just now he had transmitted a message to Mo Tianji. Mo Tianji was waiting here for Chu Yang's message to get the latest news of the Allied forces. This time, Mo Tianji naturally wanted to do more things. But except for Diwu Qingrou's delay at the beginning, all the responses were flawless. So, Mo Tianji could only retreat for the time being. At this moment, no matter what he did, he would only be caught by the opponent. If the two sides were about the same strength, Mo Tianji would definitely dare to move. But now the difference was too big. Moreover, the enemy's reinforcements were endless. If he ran out of reinforcements, he would be dead. This was something that couldn't be done. So, after he received Chu Yang's message, he immediately chose to retreat. On the other side, Diwu Qingrou had already sent out 2 groups of troops. After the large group turned the mountain pass, they set up camp 50 miles away from the mountain. The simple commander-in-chief's tent. Diwu Qingrou was still looking at the head and the snow pillar that he personally moved into the camp. He was deep in thought. Yi Xiaoyao and the others were a little confused. "Commander-in-chief, why do you keep looking at this statue?" Yi Xiaoyao was puzzled. Diwu Qingrou shook his head and said, "This isn't an ordinary sculpture. Contains many things about Mo Tianji. Mo Tianji's strengths, his weaknesses, his temperament and his character are all here. Mo Tianji wanted to tell me some of these things. But there are also some things that this sculpture has told me. If I can't figure it out, then my family will be ruined and my family will die." Everyone's expression suddenly became serious. This small statue was just a prank that Mo Tianji did casually. Could it be that there was more to it? It was related to life and death? "Let me ask you 3 questions. Diwu Qingrou said softly. "First question, why did Mo Tianji give me this statue? Second question, what will I think after seeing this statue? What will I do? What does Mo Tianji want me to think? What will I do?" Chapter 1465. Everyone was speechless. None of them were stupid. Even if they were stupid, they would never cultivate to such a high level of martial arts. However, they really couldn't understand these twists and turns, especially the twists and turns that were made by 2 unparalleled military advisors. Everyone knew that even if they thought about it, it would be a waste of time. Moreover, it would leave an impression of them as idiots. It would give their brothers of thousands of years an excuse to mock them and become a negative example for future generations. Therefore, everyone was smart enough not to speak. You can't guess. Diwu Qingro asked with a smile. If we could guess, why would we need you as our military strategist? Everyone had the same thought in their minds and said in unison, please enlighten us, military advisor. His surprise attack this time was unexpected. He took advantage of me. Logically speaking, he should not have left such a head statue. Diwu Qingro's face was somewhat gloomy. It is said that this strategist is not very old. Finally, someone spoke. It was the supreme martial artist of the Ling clan, Ling Zhankong. Since he is young, he should have the temperament of a young man. Could it be that Mo Tianji took advantage of us in a weak situation and could not help but want to show off? This is the mentality of a villain. It is similar to a pauper suddenly becoming a nouveau riche and showing off his wealth. In this attack, the Ling clan was almost completely wiped out. It was actually the clan that suffered the most losses. Ling Zhankong hated Mo Tianji to the bone. He did not have any good words to say. Even if I sometimes get carried away and show off, Mo Tianji would not be so shallow. Diwu Qingro was somewhat unhappy. The tone of his words was very heavy. Facing such a terrifying enemy, a little carelessness would cause the entire army to be wiped out. Even if they tried their best, they would still be afraid that they would not be able to cope. Now, there was actually such a weirdo in their team who thought that the other party was showing off. To be honest, this was not the way to court death. Even Jing Minghun would not underestimate any enemy like this. Now, these words came from the mouth of an 8th grade supreme martial artist. It was simply shocking. Ling Zhankong's face was very ugly. This head of Mo Tianji is telling me that he has seen through some of my things. At the same time, he also gave me something that allowed me to see through him as compensation. Because this time, for me, he thought it was a little unfair. Diwu Qingro indifferently said, this is the pride of a top military advisor. It has nothing to do with arrogance and conceit. As for whether the one we saw was the real him or not, that's unknown. If I'm right, it's a favor from him and we don't owe each other anything in the future. If I'm wrong, then it's a series of fatal traps, and there won't be any psychological burden. He's already informed us. We still guessed wrong. This is courting death. How can we blame him? Everyone couldn't understand what was going on. How could there be such a strange thing in this world? Mo Tianji carved with great care. His emphasis was on the charm. He probably believed that the concept was higher than reality. Every slash of his was just right, but he had control over it with ease. He was very confident. Not a single strand of his hair was out of place. This shows that he is very strict. The last message also shows that Mo Tianji is a person who plans ahead. He never does things that he is not sure of. None of the supreme martial artists were fools. After hearing these words, they naturally had a feeling of realization. As for the next step, I will carefully study it tonight. After all, what we can see now is only the most superficial things. Diwu Qingro sighed and said, all the supreme martial artists were preoccupied with their own matters, so they didn't mention anything about their own people. Diwu Qingro looked at everyone walking away and sighed deeply. There was one sentence that he did not say. And that was also a very important meaning of Mo Tianji. Mo Tianji carved the human head very accurately, but he did not put any effort into the human body. It was like the face of a peerless beauty growing on a rotten wooden stake. It was particularly incongruous. However, the others obviously did not notice this aspect. Or rather, they noticed it but did not think of it. It was this obvious point that hit Diwu Qingro's heart, and made him sigh continuously. You are a top figure and the opponent that I, Mo Tianji, value the most. But now you seem to have a lot of people, but you are actually leading a mob. The face of a peerless beauty, but the body is equipped with a cylinder. Isn't it lamentable and lamentable? And what Mo Tianji said was what Diwu Qingro was most helpless about now. His prestige was rising step by step. Even after such a crushing defeat, they did not lose their confidence in him. Diwu Qingro could see this point. But the biggest drawback had not been removed. That was, although his prestige was rising, these people were still people of their own clans. No one had power that truly belonged to them. Moreover, Mo Tianji also reminded him of Diwu Qingro's situation through this human head. If you continue to fight slowly, you may be able to complete your Leduo. But if you destroy the Li clan now, then what awaits you can only be cooked after the hairs have outlived their usefulness. Diwu Qingro did not want to think about Mo Tianji's psychological tactics, but he had to think about it now. Diwu Qingro looked at the frozen human head on the table for the whole night. He did not use his cultivation to maintain it. When dawn came, the temperature in the tent was still relatively high. The human head began to melt, and the snow pillar also began to melt. Whether it was the once delicate human head or the once rough snow pillar, they all turned into a blurry mass. Diwu Qingro looked and suddenly realized something. He couldn't help but laugh. His worries were all gone. After laughing 3 times, he lay on his side on the bed and fell into a deep sleep. This was the first time he had such a carefree sleep since he came to the northwestern battlefield. This morning he didn't even think about the Diwu clan at all. For the Diwu Qingro of the past, this was definitely an incredible thing. In the next few days, Diwu Qingro began to attack fiercely. The reinforcements of the allied forces also began to come continuously at this time. Diwu Qingro increased the number of troops in waves. It was as if he would not stop until he destroyed the Li clan. In the eyes of outsiders, Diwu Qingro was angry that he had been tricked by Tianji. He was holding back his anger and was determined to get back at them. Of course, this was a situation that everyone was happy to see. And it was something that everyone was willing to do. After all, Diwu Qingro was not the only one who was sullen. Everyone was sullen. So everyone in the allied forces was more cooperative. On the opposite side, Tianji. It was as if he had really started to explain everything. The most urgent morning was to deal with the incoming troops. Tianji issued a total of 118 orders. Every day there were experts from the allied forces being carried back from the battlefield. There were also people from the Li clan being carried back. The number of deaths and injuries slowly increased. Then they became numb and indifferent. If they die, so be it. Maybe the next one will be me. Driven by such thoughts of great enlightenment, everyone's hot-bloodedness slowly died down. What replaced it was the boring killing and being killed. It was obvious how intense the battle ahead was. Everyone had a clear premonition. If this continued, the final battle would not be far away. Diwu Qingro's expression became more and more serious in front of others. Tianji's expression also became more and more serious with each passing day. In the eyes of the people on each side, the 2 commanders had also reached the most critical moment of the competition. In the end, even the leaders of the 8 super clans. They didn't dare to speak to Diwu Qingro easily. It was the same for the Li clan. In front of Tianji now, Li Wubo was already as silent as a cicada in winter. Because every moment that passed, he saw the changes that were so complicated that the human brain couldn't handle them. Step by step, Tianji executed them and then against the enemy's arrangements. Then, as the enemy continued to change, Tianji also changed accordingly. Every change made Li Wubo feel ashamed of his inferiority. In the end, Li Wubo even felt that no matter what kind of change it was at any moment, Li Wubo had a thought. Without Tianji, the Li clan wouldn't even be able to survive for a while. With such a thought, Li Wubo didn't dare to control Tianji's authority even more. Now Tianji was already the master of the Li clan. The supreme leader, the number 1 leader. In the beginning he still had to rely on Li Wubo to issue orders. But in the end, why would those who received the orders still care about whose mouth the orders came from? Tianji's orders? Nonsense. If military advisor didn't issue orders, who would? Both teams were in full swing. That kind of oppressive feeling made even low-grade supreme martial artists feel pressured. They sighed in their sleep at night. Only 2 people secretly rejoiced. Diwu Qingru. Tianji. Diwu Qingru completely understood Tianji's intentions. He completely gave up on his own insistence. The 2 of them started to work closely together, making up for each other and quickly fighting for their own benefits. The occasional friction was harmless. This kind of battle was a kind of contest for the 2 of them, but it was also a kind of cooperation that had reached an extreme level of tacit understanding. This kind of tacit understanding made both of them feel, the heavens have eyes. In this world there is still someone who can be my opponent. Moreover, both of them had something in common. They didn't have any feelings for their respective teams. Tianji didn't even bat an eyelid about the life and death of the Li clan. Similarly, Diwu Qingru didn't care about the life and death of the allied forces. Tianji was fighting for time and so was Diwu Qingru. Although the cause of this matter was an assassination attempt by Tianji and Diwu Qingru was passively accepting it, Diwu Qingru didn't feel uncomfortable at all. He could completely feel Tianji's respect. It was the kind of respect that cherished a lifelong rival. This kind of respect made Diwu Qingru feel that he had no regrets even if he died. A strong fighting spirit also rose in him. Time was almost up, right? Almost up, right? The two monsters who were able to intimidate the heavens with their intellect were both calculating in their hearts. Being overtaken by the monthly votes is my problem. In order to accompany my wife these few days, I've been out updating very little. It's inevitable that I'll be overtaken. Others are working harder, so why can't they overtake us, right? Gee. Chapter 1466. During this period of time, Chu Yang and the others also finally started to take action. They cooperated with Mo Tianji and tried their best to preserve the Li clan's combat power. Every time the situation was dangerous, the brothers would take action. If it was close to Chu Yang's side, it would be Chu Yang's organization taking action. If it was close from the other side, Gu Duxing and Xie Danqiong would take action. On this point, the two of them didn't have any discussion, but the decisions they made were basically the same. When there was a battle, the brothers would participate. When there wasn't a battle, they would start to concentrate on cultivating, digesting the experience and insights gained from the battle, and comprehending on their own. Each of their cultivations improved rapidly. Moreover, Chu Yang also discovered something that surprised him. Gu Duxing and Xie Danqiong's command and timing of participation were becoming more and more experienced. From the beginning they couldn't keep up with Mo Tianji's rhythm, to later on, they were basically at ease. It was obvious that they had improved a lot. Gu Duxing and Xie Danqiong had begun to fully display their talents and wisdom when they had no one to rely on. Gu Duxing had slowly transformed from a pure warrior into a brave and resourceful warrior. At least he knew how to think. To Gu Duxing this was a great improvement. As for Xie Danqiong, he had some foundation to begin with. In the upper three heavens he was also considered to be one of the most intelligent people. Now he was just developing himself further. GMO and Luo Kadi were still stuck. Other than practicing hard and feeling a kind of pleasure of, the improvement of aptitude is fast, not slower than Gu Duxing and the others, the two of them couldn't care about anything else for the time being. The cultivation of the 8 of them was steadily stabilizing on the path of supreme martial artist. Then bit by bit they pushed forward. Especially Mo Qinggu. Because of her innate spirit meridians, she had already reached the breakthrough point of 7th grade supreme martial artist. She was on the verge of a breakthrough. Among them, Mo Qinggu was the youngest. But now, relying on her heaven-defying physique, she was actually at the forefront in terms of cultivation progress. Mo Tianji was also fighting for time. Time was the most important thing to him. Every day he looked at Ao Shiyun's progress and imagined the progress of Chu Yang and the others. Ao Shiyun and Rui Badong were also chased to the battlefield by him. The only requirement was that the Li clan members were all dead. The two of you are not allowed to lose a single hair. If you can't win, run. Run when the enemy is strong. The two of you are completely outside of my strategic plan. It's like hunting 2 rabbits on New Year's Eve. These 2 sentences made Ao Shiyun and Rui Badong both feel warm and want to beat Mo Tianji up. What if you say you hunted 2 pheasants? It sounds better than a rabbit. Diwu Qingrou's attacks were getting stronger and stronger. And the pressure on Mo Tianji was also getting bigger and bigger. Mo Tianji could clearly feel it from every attack. Diwu Qingrou used the power of the 7 big clans and the law enforcement officers in turn. Moreover, there were obvious hints about the targets they wanted to eliminate. For these people. Of course, Mo Tianji didn't refuse any of them. He ate everything. For example, Mo Tianji had set up 3 lines of defense. Diwu Qingrou would attack from 3 sides at the same time. Then he would issue a death order to capture one side, and this side was the one that Mo Tianji felt the most uncomfortable about. Therefore Mo Tianji had to deploy his troops to defend with all his strength. Counterattack. The most interesting thing was that Diwu Qingrou would command the troops to occupy the other side at this time, and abandon this side. Mo Tianji could easily devour these people, and Diwu Qingrou could also open up the situation on his side. Everyone was happy. However, some of the people in Diwu Qingrou's team who were difficult to control slowly disappeared just like that. And the places that Mo Tianji abandoned were often places that had strategic significance but no practical use. If 2 countries were at war, of course, every inch of land would be fought over. But now they were against each other and couldn't defend at all. Therefore Mo Tianji lost all the places that had to be abandoned sooner or later, in batches. He only kept the important points. And that was, every time a place was conquered, the morale of Diwu Qingrou's side would be greatly boosted. And the successive victories also boosted the morale of the allied forces. For those who sacrificed themselves, everyone thought that although it was a pity to die, it was valuable. Diwu Qingro once said, "Without sacrifice there is no victory." This sentence was generally agreed by everyone. It makes too much sense. Therefore, there were only too many people who were loyal to Diwu Qingro within the allied forces. Especially the Lan clan, they basically didn't suffer any losses and all of their members were preserved. Chu Yang paid attention to the movements in the northwest at all times and was ready to move at any time. However, when Mo Tianji had to deal with Diwu Qingro's attack again, Chu Yang was absent. Because he saw someone. After a battle, Chu Yang had led Dong Wuxiang and the others toward that warm cave. Dong Wuxiang had charged back and forth in the alliance army and had sustained many injuries, but he was extremely spirited. Chu Yang wanted to treat his injuries, but Dong Wuxiang refused, saying that he wanted to preserve the pain of his injuries and clearly remember the epiphany that had flashed through his mind during that battle. This made Imole feel both heartache and anger. When the four of them were about to reach the cave, they realized that there was a person standing in front of the cave in white robes. It was Wu Jucheng. Chu Yang was shocked. "Elder, why are you here?" Wu Jucheng smiled lightly. "I've been looking for you for a month." He paused and looked at Chu Yang. "I'm injured and poisoned." Chu Yang grimaced at once. He wasn't surprised that other people were injured by poison. Only Wu Jucheng was injured by poison. Chu Yang found it rather comical. Wu Jucheng's cultivation was even more profound than Ning Tianya's. He also had shocking poison techniques. Who could injure him? Who could make this great poison doctor poison him? Wu Jucheng saw his expression and said lightly, "The one who fought with me was the Dharma Supreme. He has already come to the northwest." Chu Yang was shocked. "So he's here too? Since he's here, the battle is still in a stalemate? Obviously, after you fought with him, he was also badly injured." Wu Jucheng's gaze was somewhat tired, but he said, "The Dharma Supreme has improved by leaps and bounds this time. If I hadn't left quickly, I'm afraid I would have really been killed by him and his two guardians." Chu Yang only felt a sudden sense of danger. In that instant he felt a chill all over. Wu Jucheng actually said that he was in danger of losing his life? Then what level was the Dharma Supreme at now? "My poison is not an ordinary poison." Wu Jucheng panted. "There are all kinds of poisons in the world. I can neutralize all of them. The only exception is the poison that doesn't belong to the heavenly plane." Wu Jucheng said lightly, "If I had found you half a month later, I'm afraid I would have been crippled." Chu Yang said angrily, "Since you're already at this stage, why didn't you find Le? I left heavy pills beside Le." Wu Jucheng said indifferently, "I'm her master. Le is my disciple. A master can only give to his disciple and teach his disciple. But he can't take anything from his disciple. This is even more so for me, Wu Jucheng. I can give to my disciple, but I won't ask for anything from my own disciple." Chu Yang was instantly speechless. Even at the moment of life and death, this great master actually still had such persistence. He really didn't know whether to admire him or to want to give him a good beating. He took a step forward, carried Wu Jucheng on his back and walked into the cave. "I can walk by myself." Wu Jucheng was somewhat unwilling. "Shut up," Chu Yang said fiercely. A poison that even the poison doctor Wu Jucheng was helpless against. He had already endured for more than a month. Chu Yang knew better than anyone the pros and cons of it. Seeing that Wu Jucheng actually still cared about his reputation, he couldn't hold himself back for a moment. Wu Jucheng didn't say anything. Chu Yang pointed out a few times and sealed Wu Jucheng's heart meridians. He controlled the circulation of his cultivation. In an instant, a cloud of black gas could be seen. It started to rise from Wu Jucheng's shoulders. In an instant, his entire arm and half of his chest were already filled with black gas. Where the black gas spread, there were actually signs of decay immediately. Without the suppression of Wu Jucheng's power, this poison actually spread at such an alarming speed. Chu Yang was greatly shocked. He immediately took out the incomplete version of the heavy pill. Wu Jucheng sniffed it and shook his head. "This won't do." "Won't do?" Chu Yang was rather stunned. "I've eaten as many of these things as they have." Wu Jucheng's face was already filled with black gas, but he still revealed an indescribable smile as he looked at Dong Wuxiang. Especially when he said, "I've eaten no less than them," he even broke into a grin. "I'll know whether it'll work or not just by smelling it." Although Wu Jucheng was smiling, Chu Yang and the others could clearly sense a kind of complicated emotion that almost made one want to die spreading in his heart. "All right." Chu Yang immediately ordered the sword spirit to quickly make a complete version of the heavy pill. Before long the heavy pill was done. Chu Yang held it in his hands and was about to let Wu Juqing swallow it. Let me take a look first. Let me take a look first. Wu Juqing snatched it away. He couldn't care less that the black demonic aura had already spread and gathered above his head. He just looked at the heavy pill with trembling hands. Suddenly, a strong flush surged up to his face. He closed his eyes and tears streamed down his face. He murmured, "Big brother? Brother. I'm seeing this thing again. I need to rely on this thing to save my life again." He actually choked on his sobs. Thinking of Wu Juqing's life, Chu Yang couldn't help but feel sorrowful. He understood infinitely how Wu Juqing's heart was churning and aching right now. Therefore, although Wu Juqing's situation was already very dangerous, Chu Yang didn't try to persuade him. Wu Juqing silently shed a few tears. Finally, he swallowed the heavy pill reluctantly. The moment he swallowed the heavy pill, he saw that the black gas that was gathering and swirling around suddenly became even more frenzied, as if it was in the midst of a fierce struggle. After a long time, it finally started to dissipate slowly. Chu Yang watched as the palm print on Wu Juqing's shoulder started to rot. Then, black blood slowly flowed out from within and dripped onto the ground. The hard stone ground actually started to rot at a speed visible to the naked eye, corroding all the way into a thin hole that was so deep that the bottom couldn't be seen. He couldn't help but be shocked. What kind of poison is this? Today's first update. I'll continue to write the second update. There must be one. Gee. Chapter 1467. Wu Jueqing chuckled. He turned his head and looked at the wound on his shoulder that was emitting black gas and dripping black blood at the same time. It was as if the wound wasn't on his body. He said, "If I had known that the Dharma Supreme had such a technique, the situation would have been better. But now I was fully on guard against his lawful embodiment of heaven and earth technique. I didn't expect him to have such a trick up his sleeve." Chu Yang nodded darkly. "This poison is very strange. It seems to be demonic energy, but it doesn't seem like it." Wu Jueqing said indifferently, "What's not like it? It's just that some soul poison has been added. It's the poison of the extraterrestrial demon." He raised his head and looked at Chu Yang. There was a special meaning in his voice as he said word by word, "This is the poison of the extraterrestrial demon." Chu Yang's eyes suddenly flashed and became somewhat gloomy. He didn't say anything. Ever since the Dharma Supreme suddenly said that Chu Yang was an extraterrestrial demon, I've been a little puzzled. Wu Jueqing said indifferently, "Others may not know, but I do. The extraterrestrial demon is not a made-up name. It's a real existence." Chu Yang sucked in a breath of air and intensified the circulation of energy in his hands. The black aura on Wu Jueqing's wound became thicker and thicker. His other hand was also circulating energy, forcing all the black blood and poisonous gas into the corroded holes in the ground. He said, "Yes, the extraterrestrial demons really do exist." Wu Jueqing's eyes flashed. He said, "Oh, so you know about it too." His words seemed to have a deeper meaning. Chu Yang deliberated and said, "Yes, I know. The extraterrestrial demons really do exist. This matter. This is something that my ancestors told me. I can know about it. You are the Tribulation Sword Master. No matter what, you should know some secrets. So it's not surprising that you know about it." Wu Jueqing said indifferently, "But for the Dharma Supreme to know about it, that's intriguing." Chu Yang nodded slowly. "Yes. At that time I was already suspicious. Could it be that the law enforcement officers had inherited this information? But I didn't expect that the Dharma Supreme himself would have such pure extraterrestrial demon energy." Wu Jueqing said slowly. The black gas on his face was gradually fading away. His face was back to its original fair and clean appearance. The bones in his body. There were also popping sounds. That was the heavy pill healing his injuries. This process was rather painful, but Wu Jueqing's expression didn't change. "It seems that these things. It happened to someone else." "You mean, the Dharma Supreme is in cahoots with the extraterrestrial demons?" Chu Yang asked cautiously. "Collude?" Wu Jueqing sneered and said, "He's not worthy." Chu Yang frowned. It is said that in the ancient times, there was once an earth-shattering battle. And that time, a supreme expert perished, and at the same time, a few heavenly kings of the extraterrestrial demons also perished. As for their legacies from then on, they are scattered between heaven and earth in an incomplete state. Wu Jueqing said dispassionately, "Based on my guess, the Dharma Supreme has probably only obtained a fragment of it, that's all. If he had gotten just a little bit more, I would have died a long time ago. Chuyang nodded. I see. Putting all the clues together, Chuyang immediately understood. Presumably, it was the time when the Purple Firmament Heavenly Emperor resisted the foreign invasion. The result of the battle was tragic. As he spoke, the black aura had already flowed out of the wound on Wu Jueqing's shoulder. His blood had turned bright red. Wu Jueqing said softly, "Release my cultivation." Chuyang frowned and said, "You still need to wait for a while. There's still residual poison in your body." He was also very surprised. This was the first time he had seen it. There were still poisons in this world that the heavy pill couldn't completely remove. There's no need. Wu Jueqing said dispassionately, "I know what you're thinking. The heavy pill can remove this poison, but the last bit of the poison has already penetrated deep into the life force. Once the poison is removed, the life force will also be removed. Therefore this part can't be forced out by the medicinal effect, but by my own life force and inner energy." Chuyang understood at once. He hurriedly released Wu Jueqing's cultivation. Wu Jueqing smiled lightly and said, "When I'm done with forcing out the poison, I'll ask you some things, is that all right?" Chuyang's eyes showed that he was in a difficult position. He knew what Wu Jueqing wanted to ask, but if he answered him now, would Wu Jueqing be able to accept it? "Let's talk about it after you're done forcing out the poison," said Chuyang. "What I can tell you, I'll definitely tell you." Wu Jueqing's eyes flashed. He murmured, "What you can tell me, you'll definitely tell me? In other words, there are still things you can't tell me?" Chuyang smiled lightly. "Your life force is now trapped by the poison. It's better to remove the poison as soon as possible." After he finished speaking, he stood up and walked out. Wu Jueqing looked at his back view, his eyes shining brightly, and also a little agitated. There's indeed an inside story. Wu Jueqing took a deep breath. Even with his cultivation and willpower, when he thought of this question, he actually couldn't hold it in. Chuyang walked out of the cave and stood in the snow, frowning in deep thought. Mo Qingwu was arranged to cultivate in the cave. Dong Wushang and the other two were also guarding Wu Jueqing. Now that they were here, of course there was no need for any guards. The reason why Chuyang made such arrangements was nothing more than to give himself some peace and quiet to think about some things. It's really very contradictory. Chuyang looked at the misty sky and murmured softly to himself. Right now, there were two things in his heart that he still couldn't make a decision about. The first thing was about Mo Qingwu. The second thing was about Wu Jueqing. These two things were actually more or less the same. They were related to their respective secrets. Chuyang had always been worried about Mo Qingwu's dream. Tell her? Or not tell her? Judging from the current situation, Mo Qingwu would awaken sooner or later. When that time came, would it be very harmful for her to know about it herself? But if he told her in advance that she was only 15 years old now, would she be able to accept it? The other thing was about Wu Jueqing. Chuyang already understood what exactly was going on with Wu Jueqing back then. But if he were to tell him, he really didn't know what the consequences would be. Chuyang fell into a deep dilemma. A figure flashed and Mo appeared beside him. She said softly, "Big brother seems to have something on his mind?" Ever since she confirmed her relationship with Dong Wushang, Mo had been following Dong Wushang and calling him Big Brother. Chuyang sighed. Mo smiled and said, "Big brother should have something on his mind for a long time, right?" Chuyang replied, "Yes." Mo said, "Half a year ago, I already realized that Big brother had something on his mind. It has been dragging on until now, but it still hasn't been resolved. Wushang is a one-track-minded person. He's currently guarding Senior Wu, so this little sister came out to ask." Chuyang nodded and said, "Of course I admire the Black Devil's observation skills." Mo smiled and said, "Big brother, why don't you tell me?" Chuyang pondered and said, "There's something that concerns someone. She will know about it sooner or later, but I'm hesitating whether I should tell her in advance or not." Mo also pondered. After a long time she said, "I only have one suggestion, and that is, since you already know but she doesn't and she will know about it sooner or later, then, the longer you hide it, the more disadvantageous it will be. The more damage it will cause." You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.